This specimen was the family's unwanted blood, a mere bastard. From his earliest breath, Johann was a punching bag for his siblings, tormented for his frailty. In those moments of agony, he realized the ultimate truth. In this world, you are your only ally. Reborn into the skin of a discarded prince, this man chose a new path, the way of the ironclad bodybuilder. He scorched the earth, sprinting endless kilometers until his lungs burned. He devoured mountains of protein, fueling a relentless, grueling grind. Martial arts became his religion, practiced every single waking second. As years bled into one another, he transcended humanity to become a pure monster. A single thrust of his fist could shatter ancient oaks and level entire landscapes. With every drop of sweat, his aura became more suffocating. His crushing, raw power surged toward an unreachable peak. This world is a meat grinder where the blood of the weak is routinely spilled, and the apex predators are more than happy to drink every last drop. Deep within the emerald shadows, a beast prowls, pausing for a momentary feast. It nibbles on a few stray leaves, unaware of the eyes in the dark. A hunter, camouflaged in the thicket, tracks his mark. "This is my kill," he whispers. He breathes steadily, forcing his racing heart into a calm rhythm. Recalling every lesson of the hunt, he draws his bowstring until it groans. He settles his sights, ready to loose the lethal bolt. Snap! The bow shatters under his grip, and the prey vanishes into the brush, spooked by the crack. His panicked companion bellows out for Lord Johann, demanding to know why he pulverized the weapon instead of bagging the kill. Johann merely stares at the splinters, noting the bow was far too flimsy for his strength. The man sputters in disbelief, claiming he bought the high-quality wood only a week ago. He questions why a blue-blooded noble like Johann is obsessed with the life of a scavenger, suggesting he should have mastered the blade instead, but the young noble meets him with silence. Johann scoffs, noting swordsmanship doesn't put food on the table until someone hires your blade. Gold is the only shield in this hellscape. His name is Johann Ice. In a past life, he was Kim Johann, a man who crossed the veil of death after a tragic accident. Though reborn as royalty, he sits at the bottom of the food chain with zero hope of an inheritance. Suddenly, his guide thrusts out an arm, signaling a dead stop. Materializing from the mist, a hungry pack of wolves blocks their path. The companion lets an arrow fly, aiming for the lead beast. The pack scatters into the shadows. Johann observes the retreat with cold, calculating eyes. This new world isn't a fairy tale. It's a grim, hyper-realistic medieval nightmare. They stumble upon a heap of corpses, the youth noting that even in death, peace is a luxury. The hunter fears they are local villagers, but Johann notes it's irrelevant. Only one fact matters. The weak are nothing more than fuel for the strong to keep burning. To escape the fate of the prey, he needs an empire of gold. Upon his arrival, he waited for a system or a cheat to awaken within him. When no miracles came, he abandoned fantasy and pivoted to a different target. Money. That is the only god worth serving. With enough coin, he can vanish from this cursed fiefdom and live as a merchant or a free man. As Johann plots his escape, the hunter gestures wildly toward a discovery. He reveals the little demon herb, a rare, high-value plant legendary for its healing properties. Johann snatches the treasure instantly, stashing it away like a seasoned looter. Suddenly, he freezes. He spots a discarded satchel of herbs and assumes his partner dropped it. The hunter shakes his head, confused. It's not his, and Johann knows that shouldn't be possible. No sane soul wanders this deep into the heart of the monster-infested woods. The veteran woodsman freezes, his ears twitching at a discordant sound. A violent rustle erupts from the thicket, sending a jolt of adrenaline through their veins. The silence is shattered by the desperate, ragged screams of someone running for their life. The chilling chorus of wolf howls draws closer, signaling an imminent bloodbath. They burst into a clearing to find a terrified little girl. She's trapped against a gnarled trunk, surrounded by snapping jaws. The guide recognizes her as Dell, Robert's kid, horrified to find her so far from home. Joseph warns that the pack is too large and urges a tactical retreat to gather reinforcements. Instead, Johann takes a heavy, deliberate step toward the predators. Joseph warns these aren't normal wolves, but Johann tells him to focus on the girl while he plays distraction. The hunter is floored. A noble risking his life for a common peasant is unheard of. But Johann isn't being a hero. He realizes he's just walked into a literal gold mine. 10 wolves, 10 prime pelts. He calculates the windfall with the precision of a jeweler. He roars at his precious income to stay put and prepare to be harvested. The older hunter watches, utterly baffled by the noble's sudden madness. Johann unsheathes his blade, his form so unorthodox it leaves Joseph questioning his sanity. The beast's lunge, a whirlwind of fur and fangs aimed directly at his throat. He disappears, moving with the speed of a lightning strike. One alpha wolf leaps through the air, jaws wide. It clamps down with bone-crushing force on the steel of his sword. With a sickening metallic crack, the blade shatters under the pressure. The beast recoils from the shock, and Johann blinks, momentarily impressed by the resistance. Before he can reset, another predator blindsides him from the flank. In an instant, he is buried under a mountain of fur. Joseph screams Johann's name in despair. Meanwhile, in the village of Waltruden, the prestigious Ice family begins their cold inspection. The peasants press their faces to the dirt as the high and mighty procession rolls by. A father shields his child, hiding their eyes from the gaze of the tyrants. Madame Ice, the pampered concubine, scoffs at the peasant's stench clogging the air. The golden child, Philip Ice, rides in stony, arrogant silence. Zen Ice, the lord of the domain, sneers at the pathetic state of his own territory. Philip suggests they dispatch scouts to find the missing Johann. Zen explodes in a fit of derisive laughter, declaring the boy can rot in the dirt like his mother. His mocking laughter dies in his throat as his eyes lock onto a strange sight. He demands to know why a massive wall of hay is blocking the village entrance. A villager stammers that they were hiding Johann's training grounds, sparking more mockery from the Lord. He laughs, wondering how a pathetic worm could ever hope to train. But the sneer vanishes, replaced by a mask of pure shock as the hay is pulled back. Imprinted deep into the solid wood of a tree trunk is the perfect, terrifying mold of a human fist. His gaze wanders, realizing every tree in the vicinity has been pulverized by the same raw force. Back in the depths, Johann is pinned, the pack sensing a kill. A wolf snarls in his face, yet it hesitates, feeling a sudden shift in the air. Johann sighs, tossing the sword hilt aside. Steel just holds me back, he grunts, flinging a wolf like a rag doll. He grins at his furry paychecks, welcoming them to the real show. To stay at the top of the food chain, he needs capital. And to get that capital, he is going to systematically dismantle every single beast in front of him. He taps into his core, a reservoir of strength that defies the laws of nature. He explodes into a frenzy of piston-like punches, a blur of absolute destruction. Joseph stands frozen, watching the impossible unfold before his eyes. Each strike lands with the force of a falling star, sending wolves soaring through the canopy. The pack is scattered like leaves in a hurricane. He seizes the final beast by the throat and delivers a thunderous finishing blow, leaving only silence. The hunter stands frozen, his mind reeling as he witnesses a level of raw power that defies common sense. Johann towers over the mangled remains of the pack, his only thought being the market value of this bloody haul. He knew all too well that mercy was a luxury he couldn't afford. In this house, his highborn siblings branded him. A hollow, motherless mistake, an illegitimate stain on the family crest. They treated him like a toy for their cruelty, raining down blows and promising a slow death if he ever dared to fight back. That was his awakening. He learned that in a world this cold, a bastard's life is worth less than the dirt he walks on. If he wanted to survive, he had to be his own god, his own shield, and his own army. He calculated every move. What does a modern man need to conquer a primitive, medieval era? He possessed the ultimate cheat code, the strategic mind and scientific knowledge of a 21st century student. Johann's intellect was a weapon loaded with concepts this world wouldn't discover for another 1,000 years. He weaponized that brilliance, starting with the mechanics of kinetic force and high-intensity interval training. He engineered a perfect biological engine, crafting a high-protein elite diet from the nutrient-rich scraps others threw away. By fusing modern sports science with lethal close-quarters combat, he forged a body designed for one thing: absolute dominance. Every drop of sweat was an investment, stacking layer upon layer of explosive, dense muscle. After years of solitary, agonizing labor. The chrysalis finally shattered to reveal the predator within. His fists became heavy artillery, striking the ancient timber with the rhythm of a funeral drum. With a final, thunderous crack, the massive trunk splintered into toothpicks, a testament to his finished evolution. He flexed his reconstructed frame, feeling the surge of overwhelming vitality coursing through his veins. Was this monstrous strength a divine gift from the heavens, or a curse that would set the world on fire? The echoes of the slaughter fade into a heavy silence. Johann casually wipes the crimson spray from his knuckles. He scans the field of broken wolves, nodding to himself that the cleanup is finally complete. Joseph rushes to the trembling Dell, who collapses into his arms, sobbing with relief. The veteran hunter lets out a long, shaky breath, his adrenaline finally bottoming out. He barks at Johann, half terrified and half furious at the suicidal recklessness the young noble just displayed. Yet, a glimmer of respect shines in his eyes. He saw a noble actually bleed to protect a lowly servant. Johann, oblivious to the sentiment, is busy grading the quality of the wolf hides for maximum profit. He brushes off the praise and checks on Dell. The girl looks up, her eyes wide with sudden, tearful gratitude. But the girl's relief turns to pure, liquid terror as her gaze shifts to the shadows behind them. A colossal silhouette detaches itself from the darkness. The true nightmare of the forest has arrived. Dell lets out a muffled whimper, shielding her eyes from the impending doom. The massive predator looms over them, its eyes glowing with a primitive, ancient hunger. The behemoth fixes its gaze on Johann, letting out a low, vibrating growl that shakes the very earth. Joseph's voice cracks as he screams that this isn't a wolf, it's a legendary calamity. He begs Johann to run, knowing a beast of this magnitude usually requires a battalion of knights to slay. Johann tilted his head, asking if this big guy was the boss of the dead mutts. He offered a mocking apology. He explained that their pelts were simply too valuable to pass up, treating the monster like a common merchant. The creature's growl turns into a chest-thumping roar, insulted by the human's lack of fear. Johann senses the killing intent. He realizes the beast has designated him as its next meal. With a burst of speed, the monster lunges, its cavernous maw opening wide to swallow him whole. Johann doesn't flinch, whispering that species doesn't matter when there's money on the line. His hand closes around a jagged, heavy stone, his muscles coiling like high-tension springs. He figures a monster of this rarity must have a hide worth a king's ransom. In a blur of motion, he brings the rock down like a meteor right onto the creature's skull. The massive beast howls in agony, recoiling as blood sprays from the impact zone. Johann clicks his tongue in annoyance, worried that damaging the skin will lower the market price. Enraged, the monster recovers and releases a sonic howl that ripples through the trees like a shockwave. The unnatural frequency of the roar strikes them like a physical blow. The onlookers collapse, clutching their heads as their eardrums threaten to burst. Even Johann staggers, his vision blurring as the high-pitched scream pierces his brain. A cold dread washes over him as he feels his incredible strength draining away like water. The clearing transforms into a chaotic blur of violence as the final struggle erupts. Johann hits the dirt, his head spinning as he tries to fight off the sudden, overwhelming vertigo. He gasps for air, his modern mind racing to analyze what kind of debuff just hit him. He forces his eyes open, scanning the treeline for the massive shadow of the beast. To his confusion, the clearing is empty. The monster has vanished into the mist. He spots the unconscious forms of Joseph and Dell nearby and drags himself toward them. Finding them still breathing, he breathes a sigh of relief and hoists the heavy hunter onto his shoulders. He grunts that they need to move now, before the scent of blood draws in anything worse. He trudges through the dark woods, the weight of two people pulling at his exhausted frame. He curses his luck, grieving the small fortune in wolf pelts he had to leave behind in the mud. The forest remains deathly silent as he approaches the edge of the Ice family's territory. The village is ablaze with torchlight. He wonders if his heroic rescue will finally earn him some favor with his old man. He briefly hallucinates a scene where his father, moved by his bravery, names him the rightful heir. He laughs it off. He'd settle for a spot in the guard just to guarantee 3 square meals a day. Suddenly, The path ahead is cut off by a wall of flickering orange light. The shadows are chased away by dozens of burning torches held by armored men. He finds himself staring down the barrels of his father's elite inspection party, blocking his escape. Johann blinks, confused by the hostile atmosphere radiating from the group. Philip ice screams like a maniac, demanding to know where the bastard was during the Lord's official visit. A cold sweat breaks out on Johann's neck. The inspection. He had completely scrubbed it from his memory. Zen Ice, the iron-fisted patriarch, spurs his horse forward, his eyes burning with disgust for his worthless son. He dismounts with the heavy, rhythmic thud of a man accustomed to absolute power. Johann, still carrying the fragile girl, tries to explain the life-or-death struggle he just survived. Zen snarls for him to hold his tongue, his patience at an absolute zero. He grips his massive axe, threatening to split Johann's skull right there for the crime of disrespect. Johann lowers his head for a heartbeat, the weight of the injustice pressing down on him. Then he snaps his gaze upward, his eyes flashing with a new, defiant fire. He stands tall, declaring that his absence was spent saving the lives of the people his father ignored. A villager breaks through the line, crying out in shock as he recognizes his daughter in Johann's arms. The man weeps, thanking the heavens as he pulls the small girl into a desperate embrace. The father's gratitude fills the air, creating a ripple of whispers among the watching peasants. Johann seizes the moment, narrating the brutal wolf attack and his desperate fight to protect the weak. He proclaims that while he missed the parade, he was busy upholding the true honor of a knightly house. He offers a calculated bow, playing the part of the loyal, misunderstood son to perfection. He goes for the kill, boldly suggesting that his skills would be best served as the new captain of the guard. A subtle smirk plays on his lips. He's certain this political play is his ticket to the top. Zen narrows his eyes, demanding to see the carcasses of these wolves as proof of his tall tale. Johann doubles down, swearing on his life, and even mentioning the encounter with the legendary Great Black Wolf. Zen's jaw tightens, his face reddening with a mixture of disbelief and soaring fury. He bellows that Johann is a pathological liar and vows to tear the tongue from his mouth for this deception. Johann doesn't flinch. He asks if the Great Lord is brave enough for a duel to prove who's telling the truth. He turns his back to the crowd, knowing he has successfully baited the old man into a trap. Zen grins a wolfish, deadly smile, eager for an excuse to break his disappointing son in public. He barks an order for Johann to draw his steel, insisting on a duel of pure swordsmanship. Johann pauses, repeating the word weapon as if he's hearing a foreign language. The realization hits him like a freight train. The loving father had never given him a single lesson in armed combat. The two face off in a tense circle, Zen looming like a mountain, ordering the boy to unsheath his blade. Johann slowly reaches down and pulls out the shattered, pathetic hilt of his broken sword. Disgusted by the sight, Zen commands Philip to toss the boy a real sword so there are no excuses. Philip leans in, whispering for Johann to crawl and beg for mercy if he wants to see tomorrow's sunrise. Declaring he did no wrong and that a true man never retreats, he shoves his brother aside with disdain. He wraps his fingers around the cold hilt of the new blade, centering his spirit for the clash. Zen clicks his visor shut, locking eyes with his father in a standoff that chokes the air with tension. Johann sharpens his focus into a razor's edge, prepared to stake everything on this single moment. With a sudden, explosive burst of speed, he lunges forward to strike. Zen's eyes widen as he realizes the sheer, terrifying velocity of the boy's assault. Johann strikes with the force of a falling mountain, his borrowed sword, slams into Zen's heavy axe head-on, and the steel blade shatters into 1,000 shards. The weapon simply couldn't withstand the raw, monstrous power behind the swing. A jagged piece of broken steel whistles through the air, grazing Johann's brow. Zen stumbles back, left holding nothing but the useless wooden handle of his shattered axe. He gnarls his teeth in a savage fury, glaring at the bastard who dared to break his steel. Zen roars, swinging the broken shaft like a club, while branding Johann a parasitic stain on his house. Johann leans back, the wind of the brutal swing whistling inches from his face. Philip shouts that the Lord has been insulted, while a villager whispers in horror that Zen is truly aiming for a kill. Zen strikes again and again, screaming that he withheld the family sword style because Johann was born trash. He maintains a relentless barrage, barking that a low-born cur will never stand above him. He bellows that this domain is his kingdom, and no power in heaven or on earth will ever take it. Johann stares back, a crimson mask of blood beginning to paint his face. The warm blood from his forehead flows freely, stinging his eyes and blurring his vision. Philip's desperate cry echoes through the arena as Zen prepares a final, crushing blow. Zen swings the heavy but of the axe handle with bone-breaking force toward Johann's jaw. The villagers stand paralyzed, watching the high-stakes execution of their young master. Johann raises his broken hilt, desperately blocking the massive blunt force. The metal groans and splinters under the pressure before finally exploding into fragments. He looks his father in the eye and finally concedes. Johann drops to his knees, surrounded by the debris of his defeat. Zen looms over him like a dark god, ordering him to crawl back into the shadows where he belongs. He vows that if Johann ever crosses his sight again, he will personally crush his skull into the dirt. Zen turns his back and marches away, leaving Johann kneeling in the dust as the silent crowd gathers. A lone voice from the crowd calls out his name, breaking the heavy, suffocating silence. Far from the arena, within the sanctuary of a church, a voice thunders that Zen's cruelty was a sin. Johann urges him to stay quiet, but the priest scoffs, claiming his Vatican ties make him untouchable. The priest rages, unable to fathom how a father could treat his own flesh and blood like a stray dog. Johann, now bandaged and weary, mutters that he's just glad to be breathing. The priest calls the situation a farce. The young noble looks away, leaning heavily on the table as the weight of his defeat sinks in. He laments that even without training, he didn't realize the gap between him and a true knight was so vast. The priest explains that logic dictated his loss. Zen is a war-hardened veteran of 1,000 bloody battles. He recounts tales of Zen slaying 300 men single-handedly, leaving Johann pondering the importance of technique. He admits he was overconfident, truly believing his raw power could overcome his father's experience. After all, he had stood his ground against the great black wolf. The priest suddenly freezes. He seizes Johann by the shoulders, his face pale as he demands to know if he truly saw the black wolf. Johann confirms the sighting, noting that Joseph and the girl were witnesses to the beast as well. The youth is puzzled, asking why a simple animal is causing the holy man such visible distress. The priest turns and frantically claws a heavy, ancient tome from the dusty shelves. He slams the book open on the table, the parchment yellowed with age. In a low, trembling voice, the priest explains that for centuries, the black wolf has been whispered of as the ultimate taboo, the harbinger of the end. Ancient scriptures claim they are shadows that feast on blood and death. Johann scoffs at the superstition. He jokes that maybe the wolf was just an omen of the beating his father gave him. The priest doesn't laugh. He tells Johann to stay vigilant, hoping these are just old wives' tales. He adds that God must be watching over him. The priest praises Johann's selflessness, bringing a rare, genuine smile to the young man's face. The moon rises over the quiet estate, masking the darkness that is fast approaching. The narrative shifts to the neighboring barony of Brits, where the night is anything but silent. Bordering the Ice family lands, a nightmare is currently unfolding in real time. Screams of agony pierce the night as a mother begs for the life of her child. The pleas fall on deaf ears as the two are silenced in a flash of cold steel. A river of blood carves a path through the dust, leading into the heart of the massacre. A hand twitches one last time before going limp on the cold, unforgiving ground. A soldier scoffs at the runners, while his comrade notes that no one escapes the Emperor's shadow. He observes the carnage with a bored expression. Another soldier joins the conversation. He questions the order to leave no survivors and burn the evidence, but ultimately shrugs it off. Gold is their only god, and they are here to collect their bloody wages. Two ominous figures stand silhouetted against the roaring flames of the castle gate. A mercenary kneels before Lady Caramabe, reporting that the Brit's bloodline has been extinguished. He presents the family seal ring. Caramabe whispers the name Brits with chilling indifference. She remarks that the house was disappointingly fragile, crumbling after only 2 minor skirmishes. She announces her title, the Sword of the Holy Empire and the Emperor's chosen seal collector. She declares a holy purge of all corrupt nobility, acting as the emperor's divine executioner. She promises that those who bow to the imperial shall be showered in gold and glory. With a cold gesture, she orders her legion to kill, pillage, and burn everything in their path. Her eyes turn toward the horizon. The Isis state is their next target for annihilation. In a flash of steel, two warriors trade lethal blows on a field of shadows. The blades spark violently, inches away from a killing strike to the head. A knight clad in impenetrable plate, Male catches a heavy blow on his shield. His hooded adversary flows like water, deflecting the counterattack with ease. Their swords lock in a desperate struggle for dominance. A lightning-fast riposte shears the helmet off the hooded fighter. Blood sprays into the night. The empty helm clatters and echoes across the cold stone floor. The man's battered and blood-streaked face is finally revealed. His eyes fly open in the dark. It's Johann. He bolts upright in his bed, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The room is deathly quiet. He is alone with his racing thoughts. He wipes the cold sweat from his brow, wondering if that vision was more than just a nightmare. The same terrifying dream has haunted him every night since his encounter with the Black Wolf. He can't shake the priest's warning. The wolf is a herald of ruin. In every legend, the creature's arrival is the prologue to a river of blood. He recalls the priest calling it the sign of death, but his modern mind tries to reject the fear. He tells himself legends are just stories and that he never even harmed the beast. But then his memory flashes back to that moment in the deep forest. He remembers clearly. He had hurled a massive rock directly at the sacred creature's skull. He shakes off the superstition, deciding that a heavy workout is the only cure for his nerves. As the sun dips below the horizon, Johann trains on a lonely hill. A voice sneers from the shadows. "You useless brat." He turns to see two of his father's lackeys approaching. They remind him that the Lord ordered him to stay hidden and mock his wood-chopping workout. They sneer at his effort, calling his feat of breaking logs a parlor trick for a failed noble. One goon laughs at Johann's dream of joining the guard, stating trash like him has no place there. He concludes that the Lord would rather feed Johann to the pigs than give him a position. Without a word, Johann delivers a single, thunderous strike that vaporizes the log. The two men freeze, their jaws dropping as they stare at the shattered remnants. Johann turns toward the split timber, his expression as cold as the coming winter. He levels a chilling gaze at the two cowards, inviting them to step closer if they have the guts to repeat those insults. The two goons vanish into the brush, shrieking like banshees that they'll report every word to the Lord. He scoffs at their retreating figures, labeling them pathetic fools who can't see the storm brewing on the horizon. Deciding that trash isn't worth his breath, he pivots back to his iron grind, letting the steel do the talking. A cold, familiar voice cuts through the air, confirming that the rumors are actually true. Philippi steps into the light, delivering the bitter truth. Their father has zero intention of ever giving Johann title. Johann shrugs it off with a smirk, noting he already expected as much. As long as he's drawing breath, he's winning. Philip searches his face for a hint of despair, but Johann simply claims he'll carve out his own path to a fortune. Philip drops a bombshell. Their father isn't disgusted. He's terrified. Johann's fist freezes mid-strike. The young monster slowly turns, his interest piqued by this unexpected revelation. Philip explains that Johann's raw, untamed power is a shadow looming over their father's waning authority. The Lord demands puppets, not sons with spines of steel. Philip notes that Johann's principles are his biggest crime. The old man fears that Johann's strength will eventually devour the estate, just as Zen once usurped his own father. Johann lets out a dry laugh, flashing a grin as he dismisses the family drama as a total load of nonsense. Philip signals a servant, who rushes forward with a heavy bundle as if his life depended on it. The cloth is unwrapped, revealing gear that catches the dying light. Johann eyes the haul, asking for the catch. Tucked inside the fabric is a pristine surcoat, a master-crafted longsword, and a reinforced breastplate. Philip declares that unlike their father, he's not stupid enough to throw away a weapon as sharp as Johann. Johann maintains a stony silence. Philip promises him the captaincy of the guard once the crown changes heads. He warns Johann to stay sharp and stop picking fights, but Johann roars back that he's only ever finishing them. The duo departs, leaving Johann alone with the ghosts of his ambition on the darkening hill. He runs his hand over the cold metal of the breastplate, his blood turning to ice as he recognizes it. It's the exact gear from his prophetic nightmare. He wonders if donning the steel is signing his own death warrant. Yet, a primal instinct screams that he can shatter fate itself. Proof or not, he refuses to be a victim. If he's going to war with destiny, he might as well be armed to the teeth. He straps on the breastplate and drapes the mantle over his shoulders, the gear fitting him like a second skin. As the sun bleeds into the horizon, a sinister laughter echoes from the shadows of the village. Inside a rowdy tavern, a local drunk slams his mug down, swearing his story is the gospel truth. A skeptic sneers, accusing him of spinning tall tales to get a free round of ale. He recounts the legend of Sir Johann slaughtering the wolf pack to save Del and Joseph, the act of a true hero. The patrons whisper in agreement. In their eyes, the bastard son has more honor than the Lord himself. A mysterious hooded figure sits in the corner, listening intently as another villager vents his spleen. He mutters that the world would be a better place if Johann had just taken Zen's head during the duel. Joseph kicks the door open, his voice booming as he announces that the first round is on him tonight. The stranger in the hood asks what's worth celebrating. Joseph toasts to the man who saved his little girl. One villager grows suspicious, asking the newcomer for his name. The stranger doesn't flinch. He calmly points out that they're being awfully loud with their treason in front of a total stranger. The figure observes them with a predatory stillness, noting the locals seem to have forgotten how to be afraid. He leans in, his voice a low crawl that sends a shiver through the room, demanding the full story of the young noble. The air turns freezing as he specifies his target. He wants everything they have on Johann Ice. Meanwhile, Johann strolls through the moonlit streets, his mind drifting through a waking dream. He envisions his future as the captain of the guard, finally tasting the status he's been denied. He can almost see the golden path laid out before him, leading away from his miserable past. Suddenly, his predator's sense tingles. He stops dead in his tracks, eyes darting to the side. He sees a man slumped against a wall and thinks a future captain should probably look after the town drunks. He offers a helping hand, worried the man will freeze, but the atmosphere shifts in a heartbeat. A sudden, razor-sharp chill bites into his skin. A dagger is pressed firmly against his jugular. Johann slowly tilts his head back, his pupils dilating as he realizes he's been ambushed. His modern brain goes into overdrive, trying to calculate the motive behind this sudden assassination attempt. Is it a hit ordered by his father? No, Zen would use an axe, not a hidden blade. Maybe the manipulative Madame Ice? Or could Philip be playing a double game? The list of enemies is long, but the cold steel at his throat is very real. Realizing he can't guess the client, Johann asks the killer what his price is for a peaceful night. He offers his meager savings, assuming every man in the shadows has a price. The hooded man chuckles, a dry, rasping sound, claiming he has more gold than he can ever spend. The assassin speaks Johann's name with an eerie familiarity, stating he's here for an interrogation. He warns that a single wrong answer will result in Johann's throat being opened like a sacrificial lamb's. Johann feels the weight of the moment. He's standing on the razor's edge between life and certain death. He forces his breathing to slow, searching for the perfect response to satisfy this ghost. The man declares the test has begun. Johann braces himself as the first question is fired. The figure eyes Johann's monstrous build, questioning if such a beast could truly be the son of a weakling like Zen. Johann blinks, caught off guard by the sheer strangeness of the question in a life-or-death moment. He grinds his teeth and spits out the truth. Even a pig's bloodline can occasionally birth a lion. The silence that follows is deafening. Johann wonders if he just talked himself into a grave. The assassin's hood shifts, revealing a glimmer of madness in his eyes. Suddenly, a roar of genuine laughter erupts from the man. He's found his answer. He likes the kid's spark, but he has no intention of letting him go back to his boring life. The figure makes a terrifying decree. From this moment on, Johann Ice is his property. Johann's mind reels. He has no idea what kind of devil he's just signed a contract with. This man is Gagel, the Empire's most feared assassin and the toxic mastermind of the Nizos Guild. Known as the Poisonous Serpent, he carved a path of blood across the continent with his lethal art. But even a serpent grows old, and Gagel was desperate to find an heir worthy of his venomous techniques. He had scoured the land, finding only weaklings and failures who crumbled under his training. Most died before they could even grasp the basics of his blade. One potential student had too much honor, refusing to learn the dark arts of the shadow. That boy chose a clean death over a life of stained hands. Gagel obliged, adding another name to his body count. After 30 failed disciples, he sought a miracle. He consulted the empire's most powerful seer, a woman who dealt in the threads of fate. The poisonous serpent, she called him, the man who delivers the ultimate silence. The witch's prophecy pointed directly to the Isis state. His true successor was a son of the Lord. Gagel was skeptical that such talent could exist in this backwater dump, but he had no other leads. The witch was so confident she offered a full refund if the boy wasn't the one. Desperate and running out of time, Gagel took the gamble, hoping to find a spark in the cold. He was an old predator who couldn't afford to waste another decade on the hunt. He entered the ice lands with a blade ready. If the boy was a disappointment, he would simply end him. Now, Gagel drops the facade, identifying himself as the master of Nizo's and Johan's new teacher. He presents the ultimate ultimatum: become the greatest assassin in history or die where you stand. Johan is stunned for a heartbeat before his eyes light up with a very different kind of fire. He doesn't ask about honor. He asks exactly how much the tuition for this elite training will cost him. Gagel is momentarily baffled. He isn't looking for a paycheck, only a legacy. Johan's brain does the math. A legendary guildmaster is offering top-tier training for free? He practically tackles the assassin, shouting that he's been waiting his whole life for a sugar master. Gagel pushes him back, reminding him that this is the path of a killer, not a shiny knight. Once he learns these forbidden arts, his noble honor will be scorched from the earth forever. Johan scoffs at the word honor, begging the master to start the lessons immediately. Gagel smirks. He's never met a noble brat so eager to dive into the filth. Johan immediately bows, calling a master with zero hesitation. He then asks if the master happens to have a stipend for his new star pupil. Gagel stares at him, realizing he's either found a genius or the world's most brazen lunatic. The moonlight fades as a new, darker chapter begins within the walls of Castle Ice. Zen Ice, seated firmly in his saddle, bellows that the inspection is concluded. He's departing the territory for a time. Philip offers a sharp salute, swearing to keep the castle walls standing and the gates barred in his absence. Madame Ice watches him go, her eyes gleaming with greed as she whispers that no matter the struggle, this fortress will be hers. Philip scoffs at her ambition, calling her a delusional fool and declaring that the Lord's seat is his birthright alone. Zen spurs his horse, spitting that he's nauseated by both of them. They can tear each other apart for all he cares. Back within the cold stone halls, Philip notes that the bastard Johan is still missing and asks for his father's command. Zen doesn't even look back, barking that he won't waste another second of his life worrying about that brat. Whether the boy is breathing or rotting in a ditch is of zero consequence to him. Philip bows his head, feigning a submissive apology to the old man. As his father leaves, Philip's gaze narrows. He wonders exactly where Johan has vanished to this time. Simultaneously, deep within the tangled shadows of the forest bordering the estate, Gagel announces he's through talking. It's time to test the boy's mettle. Johan asks for a spare blade, knowing his own grip tends to shatter steel. The master tosses him a sword, his lip curling in a sneer. He still finds this reckless youth completely unbearable. Drawing his own lethal edge, Gagel wonders if he should just end this farce now. Are you ready to meet your maker? Johan settles into a low stance, his hand tightening on the hilt. Always. The legendary assassin and the monstrous novice face off in the clearing, the air thick with killing intent. Gagel scoffs at Johan's messy stance, convinced he'll have to bury this one too. Johan asks if he's restricted to formal swordplay or if he can fight dirty. Gagel tells him to use every trick in his arsenal. Fists, rocks, blades, it doesn't matter the master grants. Just try to survive. Johan's aura shifts instantly. He grips the sword with a force that makes the metal groan. A tidal wave of overwhelming power erupts from the youth. Gagel's eyes narrow. Fragments of dry leaves and dust swirl in the air, caught in the wake of Johan's explosive energy. In that heartbeat, every ounce of doubt the poisonous serpent held was vaporized. Gagel's eye snaps wide, his pupils dilating in shock at the revelation before him. The prophecy wasn't just true, it was an understatement. This boy wasn't just strong, he was a walking, breathing natural disaster. Johann explodes forward, his punch tearing through the air with such pressure it creates a literal sonic boom. Gagel realizes with a jolt of terror that if he takes that hit, his internal organs will be turned to jelly. It's like being locked in a cage with a starving lion. In the next blink, Gagel's hand becomes a blur as it finds the hilt of his own weapon. The master becomes a ghost, moving with an unpredictable, chaotic grace that defies physics. Johann's eyes strain to track him. He can't tell if the killing blow is coming for his throat or his heart. Suddenly, a heavy weight slams into his face. Gagel's blade connects with a sickening thud. The world spins as Johann is sent crashing into the dirt by the sheer impact. The master slides back, sheathing his aura as he looks down at his fallen pupil. He notes he only used the flat of the blade, yet Johann stayed conscious, a feat he calls utterly absurd. Gagel mutters that had the boy been born in an age of myth, he would have been hailed as a god of war. Johann tries to thank him, but the master cuts him off, his voice turning ice cold as he mentions a fatal flaw. At his current rate, Johann won't live to see his next birthday, regardless of his luck. Spitting blood from the dirt, Johann asks what could possibly kill someone as strong as him. The master explains that Johann is a victim of his own power. It's unrefined, and eventually, it will tear his body apart. Johann scoffs, retorting that his muscles aren't exactly going to stage a rebellion against him. Gagel doesn't argue. He simply readies himself for another round. He dares the boy to bring that confidence back into the fray and prove him wrong. He places a wager. If Johann can break the master's sword without shattering his own, he earns a pile of gold. The word gold acts like a trigger. Johann charges like a bull, roaring for the master to prepare his purse. He pours every ounce of his monstrous vitality into a single, earth-shattering overhead strike. The two blades collide with the sound of cannon blast, sending a shockwave through the trees. But the result is the same. Johann's sword explodes into a shower of useless metal shards. The recoil sends him reeling. The realization hits him like a hammer. This is exactly how the duel with his father ended. Gagel asks if the lesson finally sank in. Johann is losing to himself, his own uncontrolled strength snapping his tools. Master your own power, the serpent warns, or it will be your executioner. Johann plucks a jagged shard from his tunic, realizing the master had pinpointed his failure with surgical precision. The youth nods, the dream of being the captain of the guard fueling his resolve. He needs to survive to get paid. Gagel smiles thinly. Once you learn restraint, he whispers, the impossible becomes mundane. The master lunges, but he doesn't draw his sword. He uses the blunt, wooden scabbard instead. With a swift flick, the scabbard slices through Johann's steel breastplate as if it were parchment. Johann stands frozen, staring at the clean gash in his armor made by a piece of decorated wood. The master catches his breath, explaining that true control turns even a twig into a legendary blade. When your power is refined, you can sever fate itself without even unsheathing a weapon. Gagel's eyes burn with anticipation, imagining the apex predator Johann will become once he's mastered the serpent's way. For the first time, Johann listens with the intensity of a starving man at a banquet. The master declares the true hell of his training begins now, and most don't survive the first week. He levels his gaze at the youth, asking if he's ready to walk through the fire. With a feral, ambitious grin, Johann roars his assent. The scene cuts to the sun rising over the village. The peaceful horizon is dominated by the looming, jagged towers of Castle Ice. Johann navigates the morning bustle of the town, his presence drawing curious glances. His face is a map of fresh bruises and cuts, the painful signature of Gagel's nightly lessons. He grumbles to himself about holding back, wondering when he'll finally get to learn the cool assassin moves. A strange, rhythmic clanking of high-quality armor catches his ear, making him stop in his tracks. He spots a group of elite soldiers, their features so refined he wonders if they've stepped out of an elven legend. He moves in for a closer look, but a guard barks at him to back off from the high-security zone. Johann tilts his head, asking the pointy-eared soldier who exactly gave him the right to bark orders on Iceland. The mercenary sneers, looking Johann up and down with utter contempt. He proudly identifies them as the Wolves of Aquitaine, the Empire's most feared and expensive elite unit. The word expensive makes Johan's ears perk up instantly. He asks what the going rate is for such a job. The mercenaries boast of earning 2 gold coins per contract, a sum that dwarfs the salary of a common guard. Johan's eyes turn into gold coins. He agrees that in this world, your paycheck is the ultimate measure of your skill. He realizes he's never even touched a gold coin and starts seriously reconsidering his career as a local noble. As he daydreams about mercenary riches, a massive shadow falls over him from behind. A titan in dark, intricate plate armor looms over the youth. Johan's skin crawls as an overwhelming aura of death washes over him. His hand flies to his sword hilt. He starts to draw, the steel singing, before a sudden, cold clarity stops him dead. Cold sweat pours down his neck as he wonders what primitive instinct just forced him to challenge this monster. An elf mercenary levels a blade at Johan's throat, screaming about the disrespect shown to the great Sir Karamade. The armored titan raises a hand, his voice like grinding stones, telling his men to stand down. Looking down from his massive warhorse, the knight asks for the name of the boy who dared to draw on him. Johan is silent for a heartbeat, the air in his lungs feeling like lead. Surrounded by a forest of mercenary steel, he stands tall and introduces himself, Johan of the House of Ice. The warrior unlatches his helm, revealing the battle-scarred, legendary face of Karamade, the highest-ranking knight of the Emperor's personal guard, the Hammer of the Holy Empire. Johan realizes his body moved on its own, a purely animalistic reaction to a supreme predator. He hadn't felt this level of primal terror facing the Black Wolf, or even his father's murderous rage. The killing intent radiating from Karamade is so thick it's nearly visible, choking the life out of the street. It's the feeling of a mouse realizing it's already in the jaws of a cat. Karamade doesn't blink. He simply dismisses Johan like a stray pebble, ordering him to clear the path. Johan remains rooted to the spot, his muscles locked under the crushing weight of the knight's presence. He finally forces his legs to move, stepping aside to let the imperial procession pass. The elven mercenaries laugh as they ride by, mocking the shaking noble brat left in their wake. One lingers, warning him to keep his toys sheathed if he wants to survive his night training to see another day. Jane whispers to Sir Karamade, questioning if they should really just leave that boy standing there. Karamade coldly retorts that she has no desire to spark a scene on a day as significant as this. She adds a chilling "not yet" as Johan stands rooted to the spot, watching the Legion march through the gates. Left in the dust, he wonders what business a high-ranking Imperial Knight could possibly have in this backwater. Word of Sir Karamade's arrival spreads like wildfire. Philip Ice sprints through the corridors, his mind racing. He can't fathom why such a legendary figure of the Empire would deign to set foot in their humble territory. He arrives breathless and introduces himself as the rightful heir, only for Madame Ice to shove him aside, shamelessly promoting her own son, John. She pours on the flattery, claiming she'd have waited for Karamade had she known he existed, before ushering him inside. Karamade treats her like a ghost, walking right past her without so much as a glance back. Ignoring the chaos, she tosses her helmet aside and claims the central throne as if she owns the place. Karamade's voice rings out like a whip, demanding to know the whereabouts of Lord Zen. The members of the Ice family can only stare up at her, paralyzed by her sheer presence. Philip snaps at her, barking that it's high treason to address the lord of the house with such blatant disrespect. Madame Ice retorts that the Empire's strongest blade can do whatever she damn well pleases and takes charge of the reception. Philip's knuckles turn white. He sees exactly what she's doing, using this titan to secure her son's claim. Karamade's hand drops to her hilt as she bellows for the lot of them to shut their pathetic mouths. She clears the room with a single command, demanding they bring her the strongest liquor they have. Clutching her weapon, she declares she isn't moving an inch from the castle until Zen shows his face. Under the cover of night, Johan is back in the grind, his master's strikes raining down on his guard. But his mind is elsewhere, still haunted by the suffocating aura Karamade brought to the village. Gagel snarls at his lack of focus, whipping daggers at his head to snap him back to reality. Johan's instincts kick in, his blade dancing to parry the flying steel. But his distraction costs him. A sharp edge bites into his neck, leaving a thin trail of red. The master warns him that a poison blade would have ended his story right there. Why is your mind wandering, boy? Johann admits the Imperial Knight's arrival has him on edge. Something about their presence feels fundamentally wrong. He points out that this is Ice family land, their sovereign territory. No outsider, not even an Imperial, should have the right to lock down their gates and monitor every shadow. Gagel scoffs, asking what a bastard noble could possibly do about it, suspicious or not. He describes Karamabe as the Emperor's personal executioner, a living legend clad in armor that has survived 1,000 wars. Johann looks his master in the eye and asks the forbidden question, is Karamabe stronger than you? For a heartbeat, the legendary assassin is dead silent. He finally admits that against a monster like that, his only tactic would be a headlong retreat. Then he barks at Johann to pipe down. Gagel roars that Johann is a delusional brat who needs to learn his place, especially since he can't even regulate his own power. Johann absorbs the insult, closing his eyes to find his center. He stands up, steel in hand, declaring he's ready to master it. His master sighs and calls him into the fray. The final round begins. They collide in a blur of motion, the speed of their exchange tearing up the forest floor. Johann takes a heavy blow from the scabbard but grits his teeth, roaring for more. He's knocked back again, but he's back on his feet before the dust settles, demanding another go. He becomes a glutton for punishment, refusing to stay down as Gagel urges him to keep pushing. The youth is frustrated. He's hitting hard, but the results aren't changing. He can't wrap his head around why his sword won't cut through a simple wooden scabbard. Then a flash of insight hits him, the core teaching of the flow of force. It's not about the strength of the swing. It's about funneling every ounce of power into the very tip of the blade. The gears finally click. Johann begins to feel the rhythm of his own monstrous strength. Gagel's ears twitch. The clumsy thud of Johann's strikes is transforming into a lethal, metallic ring. Johann meets the master's scabbard with a strike, so precise the air itself seems to scream. He realizes that if he weaves together everything he's suffered through this week, he can finally bridge the gap between strong and deadly. Gagel's survival instincts flare. He senses the coming attack isn't just a test, it's a threat. He counters with a move meant to shut the boy down instantly. But Johann's blade sings through the air in a clean, silver flash. He slices the tip right off Gagel's indestructible scabbard. Johann freezes, then erupts in a massive, triumphant cheer. He roars that he's finally cracked the code, boasting that the impossible task was actually a breeze. Gagel stands in shocked silence, trying to convince himself it was nothing more than a fluke. The master calls his name, and Johann snaps to attention, his eyes burning with newfound confidence. Gagel draws his actual blade, warning that the gloves are off. Johann charges, unleashing his full potential. The collision is cataclysmic. The poisonous serpent is sent skidding backward from the sheer force. Johann is practically dancing with joy, celebrating his victory over the legend. Gagel watches him, a cold sweat breaking out on his brow as he wonders what kind of freak he's unleashed. It's impossible. Johann just executed the serpent's tongue sword, a secret technique he was never even shown. The boy had perfectly mimicked and refined a move he saw for only a second during their first encounter. In less than a week, the student's execution has already surpassed the master's lifelong polish. Gagel remains motionless, the reality of the situation sinking in. The old assassin knows the score. Johann has officially ascended to a level where no master can touch him. The head of the Nizos Guild, the man who kills kings, whispers that this boy is a sheer walking anomaly. While his pupil is busy celebrating a new skill, the master is contemplating the birth of a monster. Later that night, Gagel breaks the news. The training is over, and he'll be gone by first light. Johann is stunned, but his master tells him there's nothing left to teach. He's already a finished weapon. He confesses that in a mere 7 days, Johann has overtaken him. He admits this only to himself. Satisfied that his legacy is safe in Johann's hands, he tells the boy to forge his own destiny. He acknowledges the hellish work Johann put in, giving him the respect he's finally earned. By the dying embers of the fire, Johann asks why he has to leave. Gagel simply calls it the path of a wanderer. Then, Johann brings up the shadow that's been haunting him, the Black Wolf. Gagel doesn't sugarcoat it. The beast is a literal herald of catastrophe. Johann recounts the sighting and the recurring nightmare of his own execution. He admits he originally thought the omen was the master coming to kill him. Gagel replies that misfortune is a shapeshifter. If he had died, that would have been the sign. Then he offers one final gift, wisdom. Rule 1. A monster needs a monster's weapon. His current gear is basically cardboard. He needs a blade forged from Dhanu's steel, a legendary metal that can actually handle his explosive power. It's a lost artifact metal, buried in the ruins of a forgotten world and impossible to forge today. Johann complains that recommending a weapon he can't buy is just cruel teasing. Gagel ignores the whining, insisting that only a Dhanu's blade will keep Johann from being a one-swing wonder. He adds a terrifying warning. If he ever spots someone wielding a Dhanu's weapon, he must run as if the devil is at his heels. The master warns that arrogance is the fastest way to a grave, and Johann promises to take the lesson to heart. The legend stands to vanish into the trees, but Johann isn't ready for the goodbye. Gagel's final rules. Never fight a losing battle, and if you must kill, use every dirty trick in the book. He tells Johann that if he plays it smart, he might actually survive. His final words are simple: don't die. Johann watches the master merge with the darkness, the words survive at all costs echoing in his soul. The directive is clear. In this era of blood, living is the only true victory. Johann swears on his life that he will never forget the serpent's final lesson. Back at the looming castle ice, the air is thick with tension as Madame Ice tries to butter up Karamabe, asking if the vintage is to her royal liking. Karamabe spits that the wine tastes like sewage and orders the woman to get it out of her sight. Madame Ice shatters the bottle with a flick of her fan, hiding her rage behind a mask of polite disappointment. She provocatively mentions that the only worthy spirits are hidden away in Lord Zen's private chambers. She suggests the weary knight should retire to more luxurious quarters to wash off the road dust. She keeps pushing, promising that Zen's personal suite is far more comfortable. She won't be disappointed by the stay. She smirks, suggesting the two of them could find much more intimate ways to pass the time. Karamabe's response is a cold, sharp command for the woman to vanish from her sight. She flatly informs her that Lord Zen is overdue and her patience has officially hit zero. Karamabe's eyes flash with a predatory light. She declares she's bored and it's time for some real fun. A blood-curdling scream rips through the hall. In a blur of motion, Karamabe has the madam pinned against the wall by her throat. She whispers about her favorite brand of entertainment, a total, merciless massacre. Philip witnesses the horror through a sliver in the doorway, his soul trembling at the carnage. Meanwhile, Johann reaches the crest of the hill, his breath hitching in his chest. He stares into the valley, unable to process the nightmare unfolding before his eyes. The village is a roaring sea of fire, and the castle is a pyre. He screams internally, wondering why his world is ash. Zen gallops toward the estate with his vanguard, his heart sinking as he sees the black plumes choking the sky. One of his knights shouts a warning that the entire territory is engulfed in a massive inferno. He urges the lord to push his steed to the limit to save what remains. The horses tear across the landscape, hooves thundering like a funeral march. They reach the gates, but the guards don't salute. They sneer, mocking the lord for being late to his own funeral. They mockingly usher him inside, their eyes filled with a cruel, knowing light. They warn him that Sir Karamabe doesn't take kindly to people who keep her waiting. Zen freezes as he enters the courtyard. The ground is paved with the mangled remains of his loyal men and servants. The lifeless, staring eyes of those he once ruled now litter the bloody stones. He slowly lifts his gaze to the figure waiting for him at the center of the slaughter. A titan clad in black plate armor steps forward from the shadows of the flames. Karamabe greets him with a voice like grinding metal, noting his tardiness. Zen. His hand trembles as it reaches for the familiar weight of his battle axe. He draws his steel, his voice breaking as he demands an explanation for this senseless butchery. Karamabe coldly sentences him for high treason and the attempted murder of the emperor. House Ice is to be erased from history. Zen roars that this is a political purge, a pack of lies fabricated to steal his land and end his line. He charges Karamabe with the desperation of a cornered beast, refusing to go down without a fight. Sir Karamabe doesn't even move. She simply signals for the war trumpet to sound. She issues the final decree: seize the ice family seal and leave no soul breathing in this cursed land. The trumpeter bellows the call to slaughter, signaling the official end of the ice territory. The Imperial Legion surges forward, their war cries drowning out the roar of the fires. In the heart of the burning village, a soldier looms over a dying local. The man on the ground spits blood and calls him a soulless, cold-blooded monster. The soldier sneers, asking if it's so hard to give up the location of the bastard prince before sending the peasant to the afterlife. But as the blade descends, Johann appears in a flash of silver to intercept the killing blow. With a single fluid strike, Johann cleaves through the soldier. The villager watches the spray of crimson paint the mud. The man looks up, gasping the name of his unexpected savior, Lord Johann. Johann hauls him up, his mind reeling. The man wheezes that the Imperials are hunting every man, woman, and child. Father Walbert stumbles into view, adding the grim possibility that Lord Zen has already been executed. The weight of his father's likely death hits Johann like a physical punch to the gut. Walbert gasps that they aren't just occupied. They are purifying the land with fire to ensure nothing survives. The youth stares at the burning castle, realizing he has to go back into the mouth of the beast. Suddenly, a small, familiar whimper cuts through the crackling of the wood. He follows the sound as Walbert begs him to stay back. Johann finds Lildell, curled on the blood-soaked earth, and he whispers her name in horror. He tells the trembling girl the nightmare is over and reaches out for her. Suddenly, a spike of pure adrenaline hits him. His predator sense screams of danger. Dell points behind him, her voice a broken sob as she says her father won't wake up. Johann slowly turns his head, dread pooling in his stomach. The father who once shielded his daughter with a warm smile now lies broken on the cold earth, his light extinguished forever. Johann's vision blurs as he sees the bodies of his neighbors piled like cordwood. The families who once cheered for him are now silent heaps in the dirt. The men he shared ale and laughter with have been butchered like cattle. He grinds his teeth so hard they nearly shatter. Dell clutches his cloak as if it's her last anchor. Johann tells Dell she has to be brave and stay with Walbert. The girl nods, her eyes vacant with shock. He turns his back on the survivors and walks into the heart of the inferno. Walbert, clutching the girl, screams for Johann to turn back, to run, to choose life over vengeance. Johann pauses for a second, the sound of his name echoing in the smoke. He looks up at an imperial pike, topped with a grisly trophy. It is the severed head of Zen Ice. A wooden sign hangs below, branding the Duke, a traitor to the crown, executed by the divine will of the Emperor. It warns that any who touch the remains will share his fate, signed with the seal of Karamabe. A patrolman spots him, a cruel grin spreading across his face as he recognizes the bastard. He mocks the boy, asking if he was too stupid to stay in hiding and came back to join his father on a pike. Johann's sword leaves the scabbard in a blur of pure, unadulterated rage, severing the imperial banner. The flag of the Empire falls into the mud and is ground beneath his boot. The soldier's smirk vanishes. He bellows for his squad to surround and execute the boy immediately. Johann doesn't wait. He charges into the group, his blade singing a song of absolute slaughter. The final soldier collapses, his blood hissing on the burning embers of the village. Johann stands alone in the graveyard of his childhood, the heat of the fires warming his cold skin. He questions his own sanity. Why return to the source of this agony? Father Walbert's desperate plea to run echoes in his mind, and he finally accepts the bitter truth. He needs to move now. To face Karamabe is to walk into a certain grave. But then, a ragged, dying voice calls out his name from a pile of rubble. He finds Philip Ice, broken and bleeding out among the fallen knights. Philip's eyes widen as he sees his brother. Philip begs him to run while he still can, his voice a wet rasp. He fumbles with his own helmet, wheezing that he'd intended to give it to Johann on the day he officially became a lord. Johann accepts the heavy steel helm, the last legacy of a brother he barely knew. He clenches his teeth, his resolve hardening into a diamond-hard point. The master's final lesson echoes in his mind. Know the gap between your skill and the apex predators. The serpent told him to run when the odds were impossible. Despite knowing Karamabe is a force of nature, Johann's path is set. He remembers the master's alternative. If the fight is inevitable, make sure you're the one who leaves the other dead. Johann slams the helm onto his head, declaring that the time for running is over. The youth storms through the main gates of the castle and comes face to face with a phalanx of elite Imperial shock troops. The soldiers are stunned, wondering how a single boy breached their perimeter and where the outer guards went. Johann's fist curls until his gauntlet creaks as he roars for Karameb to show herself. He carves a path through the men, shouting for the Imperial butcher to face him. The youth's boots thud heavily on the stone, each step a promise of violence. He stands like a statue in his full, blood-splattered armor. The tip of his blade drips with the lifeblood of his enemies. Sir Karameb finally steps out, amused to find the runaway, still breathing. She recognizes the face behind the visor. The boy from the road, Johann Ice, who had flinched at her killing intent. Johann's voice is a low, guttural growl. He's done with pleasantries and introductions. He tells her to stop talking and simply think of him as a man with nothing left to lose. Karameb sighs, noting he threw away his only chance at survival, clearly having no regard for his own life. She draws her legendary blade, the metal shimmering with an ominous, magical light. She dares him to step forward if he's so eager to be reunited with his father's head. Johann spits that she didn't need to ask. Slaughtering her was the only reason he came back. Johann lunges through the inferno, his blade shrieking as it collides with Karameb's steel amidst the dancing embers. The two titans lock eyes, their swords groaning under a level of pressure that would snap ordinary iron. Johann pivots instantly, unleashing a savage horizontal slash aimed at her vitals. Karameb doesn't flinch, meeting the blow with raw, unadulterated physical power that halts his momentum. The screech of sliding metal fills the air as their blades grind against one another. With a sudden, explosive flick, Karameb parries him so hard his grip fails. Johann's sword spins into the darkness, forced from his hand, as he executes a desperate backflip to stay alive. He hits the ground running, sliding into a low, feral stance, ready to fight with his bare hands. A sadistic grin spreads across Karameb's face as she admits she's finally having a bit of fun. Johann's discarded weapons litter the floor, shattered into jagged shards by the sheer intensity of the clash. Fragments of broken steel hang suspended in the heat haze, reflecting the flickering orange light. Johann's eyes dart between the shards, calculating his next move. Karameb closes the distance like a shadow, her blade whistling through the air in a lethal pursuit. The heavy strike carves a massive arc in a solid stone pillar. It's sheared in two as if it were made of wet clay. To the Imperial Knight, this duel has become the ultimate game. She laughs, noting that this bastard possesses a spark far greater than the weaklings of House Brits. Her eyes wander for a second, catching sight of one of her own retreating soldiers. Without breaking stride, she seizes the man and rips his head clean off, tossing it aside like trash. She bellows into the night that this carnage, is true entertainment. She demands that the Ice family cur show her more of that desperate, monstrous strength. Johann surges back into the fray, intercepting her next strike with a block so violent that the shockwave spiderwebs her legendary armor. He doesn't miss the opening. His counterstrike flashes out, drawing a thin line of red across her arm. Karameb leaps back, the two warriors breathing heavily as they measure the distance between them. She stares at the crimson trickle on her sleeve, baffled that a common blade pierced her Dhanu's steel. She examines the deep gouge in her gauntlet, her composure beginning to fracture. Johann's knuckles turn white as he readjusts his grip, his aura turning cold and sharp. She mutters that no mortal should be able to dent her divine plate, demanding to know what he really is. The youth doesn't answer with words. He raises his sword and charges once more. The impact of their meeting shakes the very foundations of the courtyard. She's reeling from his raw power. Johann rains down a heavy overhead strike, trying to crush her into the stone. Karameb desperately catches the blow on her crossguard, her knees buckling slightly. He pours every ounce of his hatred into the press, grinding his edge against hers. She sneers, dismissing him as a mindless beast who swings with strength but lacks the polish of a true knight. She centers her weight, preparing to dismantle his clumsy assault with a perfect counter. She deflects his blade with a surgical parry and lunges. Johann barely twists away as the cold steel grazes his ribs. She scoffs, convinced he has no defense against a disciplined, high-level technical strike. She realizes he's fighting on pure, terrifying instinct alone, wondering if Zin truly left his son untaught. Deciding he's too much of a wild card to keep playing with, she prepares to execute her final move. She baits him into another wide, telegraphed swing, readying her own counter-thrust. But Johan's blade doesn't bounce off. He slams into her guard with both hands, pinning her arms. He drives his weight forward, forcing her back, but the veteran knight twists her hips to redirect the force, shrugging off the lock. Johan snarls, daring her to come and get him. He vows that before the sun rises, her head will be rolling in the dirt alongside his father's. Karamebe's instincts scream. She senses a sudden, predatory shift in his movement pattern. In a move of sheer madness, Johan catches her descending blade with his bare, calloused palms. A shadowy, serpentine aura erupts from his arm as he lunges inside her guard, striking her jaw with a thunderous, direct punch. The sheer kinetic energy sends her hurtling backward through the air. The force of the impact is so immense it shatters the faceplate of her indestructible armor. Karamebe sprays a mist of blood as her legendary sword clatters uselessly onto the stone. She collapses to her knees, clutching her mangled face in disbelief. She recognizes the phantom sting. It's the serpent's forbidden style. She realizes that Johan Ice has been playing the fool, masking his true, lethal capabilities. Her eyes fill with a cocktail of shock and dawning terror. She curses her own arrogance. She leans forward, vomiting blood as her internal organs protest the blow. A dark pool spreads between her boots. She forces herself to stand, swaying as she faces her judge. The young monster watches her with dead eyes. Johan slowly unlatches and removes his helmet. He looks at the carnage she wrought and simply asks, why? Why did all these people have to die? She coughs out a bloody laugh, claiming it was all for the stability of the empire. She explains the world is a mess of chaos, and the emperor has drawn his sword to cleanse the rot. She whispers the name of that holy blade, Mapkara. Karamebe uses her sword as a crutch, hacking up blood while Johan looms over her like a vengeful god. Suddenly, she begins to cackle, claiming she's actually moved by Johan's magnificent potential. In decades of war, she had never met a warrior who could make her bleed like this. She extends a blood-slicked hand, inviting him to join the imperial cause. She claims the emperor craves monsters like him and promises a mountain of gold for his service. She offers him the world, eternal glory, titles, and lands more fertile than this frozen waste. The emperor himself would dub him a knight of the round, the highest honor in the land. She tells him to become the sword of the empire, but Johan remains stone-faced at the mention of gold. He looks away for a moment, his gaze drifting over the charred remains of his home. He admits that once, a life of wealth and status was all he ever wanted. But looking at her, he feels nothing but a cold, hollow void. He gives her his final answer, no. Karamebe's jaw drops. She stammers, unable to believe someone would reject the emperor's divine grace. He reminds her that she didn't just kill a duke. She slaughtered his family and the servants who only knew kindness. Karamebe scoffs at the word, repeating servants with utter derision. She asks if he's seriously throwing away an empire for the sake of disposable peasants. She screams in frustration, calling them insects whose only purpose is to be crushed underfoot. She shrieks that the law of the world is simple, the strong feast on the weak. Johan just stares at her, the silence more terrifying than any roar. He clenches his fist, whispering an apology to his master. He's done holding back his strength. Johan explodes forward, his fist connecting with her face like a falling meteor. The sound of bone breaking echoes through the burning courtyard. He doesn't stop. He draws back his bloody hand and unleashes another devastating blow. For the emperor, he mocks, his voice dripping with venom. The second punch slams into her temple, rattling her brain against her skull. He continues the brutal assault, shouting back her words about worthless lives. Karamebe can only watch the next strike approach. Johan screams at her, asking what made her think her life was worth more than a servant's. He bellows into the night, demanding to know who gave her the right to decide who gets to breathe. Her eye rolls back as her skull fractures under the pressure. A final burst of blood paints the ground. Her fingers twitch feebly one last time before falling still. Johan lowers his crimson-soaked fist, standing over the broken shell of the Empire's greatest knight. He turns his back on the body, But Karamabe's dying rasp calls him a fool. She wheezes that he should have taken the gold while he had the chance. She warns that by breaking the Emperor's sword, he has invited a curse upon his soul. He will find no peace in this world, only a lifetime of endless suffering and pursuit. Johan looks back just as her final spark of life extinguishes. Her body goes limp in the ash. He realizes that in a world of death, he only cared for gold, but now he has nothing but his rage. The territory is silent, a graveyard for thousands. His kin and neighbors were butchered and fed to the flames. Though he has made the entire world his enemy, he marches on through the valley of the dead. He did what necessity demanded, and he will never bow to regret regardless of their judgment. For this is the path he has chosen to walk. The fortress gates groan open under a pitch-black sky as a sentry clears a path for Jane and her lethal escort. A cold wind follows the retinue of elves as they sweep into the courtyard. Jane wheels toward a blood-stained soldier, demanding for the final time if his report is pure truth or a coward's lie. The soldier trembles, swearing on his soul that every word is true and pleading for his life. He gasps that a single monster breached their lines, tore through the ranks like paper, and then, with nothing but his bare, bloodied hands, he rips Sir Karamabe's head from her shoulders. The soldier whispers that it was the last time any of them saw the legendary knight alive. Jane scans the piles of corpses on the stone floor, her eyes narrowing as she asks why the legend isn't among the fallen. She demands to know how she's expected to swallow such a fairy tale without a shred of physical evidence. The man stammers that the logic escapes him too, but his eyes don't lie. Another elven scout approaches and reports that the vanguard is mobilized. Jane nods, her face a mask of cold fury as she prepares to ride. She strides through the courtyard, her cape fluttering like the wings of a predatory bird. She takes her place at the head of a small army of elite killers. The order is given: hunt him, kill him. Jane declares that the target is the monster known as Johan Ice. Johan plunges through the twilight woods. She brands him a traitor to his bloodline and the prime suspect in the murder of the Empire's greatest shield. The youth continues his desperate flight through the brush, Philip's heavy frame slung over his shoulders. Jane bellows for her men to track him to the ends of the earth, slaughter him if they must, but the body must be recovered. Deep in the shadow-choked forest, the sound of elven steel begins to ring out. One of the elven pursuers falls, his throat opened by a single, lightning-fast strike. Johan carves a bloody trail through the thicket, refusing to be cornered. The commander warns her troops that the boy can shatter Dhanu's steel. She orders them to hunt in packs, as if they were tracking a dragon. She demands every road be barricaded and every trail watched, intending to bleed him dry through pure exhaustion. The rank and file reel at the news of Karamabe's fall, but Jane's resolve remains. Locked onto a single bloody goal, she declares they will not return until that wretch's head is presented to the Emperor on a silver platter. A flash of memory hits Johan, the dying Philip, gasping out his final, desperate instructions. Philip urged him to find the stables, take the fastest warhorse, and vanish into the night, to survive at any cost. Chest heaving, Johan finally reaches the stables, his legs nearly giving out under Philip's weight. He glances over his shoulder, his pulse hammering in his ears like a war drum. Stashing Karamabe's corpse hadn't bought him the distraction he'd hoped for. The hunt is moving faster than he ever feared. He decides to keep Philip's body close, using the reinforced armor as a grim, human shield. The youth forces his aching muscles to lock, bracing himself for the next leg of his journey. He kicks open the stable doors, the scent of hay and horsehide greeting him. There, bathed in moonlight, stands a magnificent warhorse that once belonged to Johan. He whispers a word of thanks to his fallen brother, stroking the beast's mane and praying it can carry him to safety. He decides the animal deserves a name worthy of this legacy. As the horse gazes at him, Johan christens it Philip. An elven scout roars that he's spotted the shimmer of Dhanu's steel, ordering the squad to converge. The target is within reach. One of the guards freezes, hearing the unmistakable thunder of hooves on the dirt floor. Johan explodes from the stable on horseback, a bolt of lightning that catches the elves completely off guard. He hunkers down, clutching the armored body of his brother against his chest as a bulwark. A soldier screams the alarm. It's Johan Ice. The target is breaking out on horseback. He vanishes into the depths of the forest, The war horses gallop, swallowing the distance. The elven commander shrieks for her archers to bring him down before he hits the tree. Crossbows snap in unison, sending a hail of bolts whistling through the dark. The projectiles thud harmlessly into the heavy plate armor of the body Johann is using for cover. He disappears like a ghost into the moonlit woods, leaving the pursuit group in the dust. By the time the stars reach their peak, he has reached the heart of the forbidden Black Forest. He halts, muttering that while Philip was a snake, he deserves better than to be used as a shield forever. Johann looks back at the burden he's carried through the hellfire. His eyes linger on the intricate craftsmanship of Philip's gear. Noting the armor is worth a fortune, he begins to strip the master-crafted sword from the body. Johann tests its weight. It's impossibly light and forged from pure Dhanu steel. He unsheathes the blade to inspect the glowing etchings along the fuller. He translates the ancient, imperial runes. I am the one who reclaims the crests. He whispers the name aloud, Crest Retriever. He wonders if the sword's purpose is to hunt down the fallen legacies of great houses. Sensing a dark omen in the name, he claims the blade and prepares to lay the armor to rest. It's a king's ransom in metal, but he can't carry the weight. He swears to return for it when the world stops hunting him. He carves a shallow grave into the forest floor, driving the shovel deep. After the final prayer is said, he wonders if this is truly the end of his ties to the ice name. The face of Karamape sears itself into his mind's eye. He knows once the Emperor learns of his champion's death, every knight in the Empire will be thirsting for his blood. Karamape's dying curse, that he would know only agony, rings in his ears like a bell. He scoffs. His life was a sequence of tragedies long before he crushed her skull. With the house of ice reduced to embers and his pockets as empty as his heart, he contemplates his next move, deciding that even a monster needs a moment of rest. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl vibrates through the darkness behind him. The great black wolf emerges from the shadows, its eyes locked onto Johann Ice. He turns to face the beast. The youth pulls himself up, his body trembling with sheer fatigue. He curses his luck. The harbinger of death has come when he's too exhausted to even lift his arms. In this state, he knows he's nothing more than a snack for the predator. His sword feels like lead. His only prayer is to reach Philip, the horse, and hope the beast is faster than the wolf. But a shout echoes from the trees. The horse. We found the target's mount. The mercenaries have seized the war horse, realizing their prey is cornered nearby. Johann recognizes the insignia of the wolves of Aquitaine. They've hunted him down faster than he ever imagined. An elf points directly into the thicket where Johann is hiding, sensing movement. The pursuit squad levels their crossbows at the dark. Johann sees himself trapped in a pincer move, a legendary monster in front, and a pack of killers behind. He is the meat in a sandwich of absolute death. With no exit in sight, he wonders if his journey ends in this nameless forest. Then, the wolf ignores him, leaping over his head to tear into the approaching soldiers. The elves are caught in a whirlwind of fur and fangs from the shadows. The black wolf becomes a blur of slaughter, massacring the elite mercenaries in seconds. Screams of agony fill the air as the beast rips through the unit. Johann stares in disbelief, wondering why the apex predator spared his life. He realizes the monster has inadvertently cleared his path. This is the miracle he needed. Knowing his life hangs on a heartbeat, he prepares to make his final break for freedom. He grinds his teeth and bolts for the chaos. He reaches his horse, swings into the saddle, and digs in his spurs. The war horse gallops like the wind, carrying him away from the carnage. As he rides, the world becomes a blur of memories. He sees the old priest teaching him his first letters. He sees the rare moments of brotherhood he shared with the man he just buried. Johann pushes onward, the memories of his grueling training flashing by like ghosts. The faces of the massacred villagers haunt him as he crosses the border of his homeland. The weight of the helm Philip gave him feels heavier than the steel itself. Behind him lie the smoldering ruins of his life. The House of Ice is no more. A broken elven banner lies in the dirt, soaked in the blood of the failed hunters. The black wolf stands amidst the carnage, its muzzle stained crimson as it watches the trail. The beast gazes toward the horizon, watching the silhouette of the youth vanish into the unknown. Imperial patrols move along the distant roads, while the smoke of a fallen house marks the sky. Crouched in the thicket, Johan's heart sinks as he realizes his only escape route is choked by a heavily fortified checkpoint. He leans heavily against his horse, his vision blurring. He hasn't tasted food or felt the warmth of sleep since his desperate breakout. For 72 hours, the elite Aquatan hunters have been nipping at his heels like a pack of starving wolves. The young warrior has lost count of the brushes with death he's faced while repelling their relentless ambushes. He has finally hit his absolute limit. Even the simple weight of his sword feels like a mountain on his hip. Peering through the leaves, he sees the steel-clad guards blocking the mountain pass, sealing his fate. From his hidden vantage point, he meticulously tracks the rotation and rhythm of the Imperial sentries. The tension is broken when a massive merchant caravan, bristling with hired blades, rumbles onto the main highway. A desperate spark of inspiration flickers in his mind. Johan realizes his only chance is to discard his pride and pose as a humble merchant traveler. If he can blend into the caravan's shadow, he might just slip through the net undetected. A traveler hails Master Eldence of the Katana Trading Company, but the merchant's ears twitch with feline anxiety. A mercenary nearby shifts his grip on his spear, pointing a trembling finger at a figure looming on the road. A lone, heavily armored rider stands like a statue in their path, radiating a silent, lethal pressure. Khan, the grizzled mercenary captain, barks at his men to draw steel and prepare for a bloodbath. The rookie Ganson scoffs, wondering why they're trembling over one man. Goran snaps at him to open his eyes. The lone rider is encased in high-grade plate armor and sits atop a beast of a warhorse. With a plumed warhelm and a reinforced breastplate, this is no mere traveler. This is a walking fortress. Khan slams Ganson's head toward the rider's waist, forcing him to witness the shimmering hilt of the boy's blade. It's forged from Nanu's steel, a legendary metal that would carve through their cheap mail like a hot knife through butter. The stubborn rookie still thinks their numbers give them the edge against a single opponent. One of the veterans shoves him aside, growling that his stupidity is a bigger threat than the rider. Another merc delivers a sharp blow to the boy's skull, ordering him to keep his mouth shut before he gets them all killed. Eldence commands Goran and Khan to have every crossbow leveled. The moment that rider twitches, he wants him dead. He decides to play the diplomat first, warning his men to wait for his signal before unleashing hell. The two mercenary leads nod grimly, their fingers hovering over their triggers. Eldence gracefully leaps from the lead wagon and begins the long, tense walk toward the mysterious night. As he approaches, he whispers a final cold instruction. If things go south, unhorse him instantly. The merchant offers a shallow bow, introducing the Katana Company and requesting the rider's name to de-escalate the tension. Johan, peering through the slit of his visor, is startled to find himself face-to-face with a feline beastman. Eldence keeps a sharp eye on his mercenaries, who are coiled like snakes ready to strike. Johan feels the killing intent thick in the air and knows he must lower the Catman's guard immediately. He introduces himself simply as Johan, claiming he's a victim of a brutal bandit raid that stripped him of everything but his steel. He pleads with Eldence to call off his hounds, insisting he seeks shelter, not a fight. The merchant purrs an apology, noting that in the trade of gold and silk, paranoia is the only thing that keeps you alive. Johan gives a curt nod. In this lawless land, he understands the weight of suspicion all too well. He asks for the protection of the caravan, explaining that the bandits left him without a single copper to his name. In exchange for a dry spot to sleep and a few scraps of bread, he offers his elite martial skills to bolster their defense. Eldence weighs the boy's potential against the risk, finally nodding as greed outweighs his fear. He welcomes him on the trek to Marcel, suggesting Johan make nice with a rough crowd of mercenaries. The youth offers his thanks, though the name Marcel means absolutely nothing to him. As they retreat, Eldence whispers to his crew that while Johan is a traveler, he's to be watched like a caged tiger. He gives the kill order. If the boy so much as breathes wrong, they're to execute him on the spot. Now, Johan has one final hurdle, the Imperial checkpoint. The caravan begins to creak forward once more. A sentry at the pass spots the dust cloud, shouting to his brothers that a caravan is approaching. The wolves of Aquatan bark for the wagons to halt for a thorough inspection. Johan braces for the moment of truth. He pulls his cloak tight, praying his armor doesn't catch the light. Eldon steps forward with a merchant's fake smile. He demands to speak with the officer in charge, waving his trade permits like a shield. The guard calls for his comrade Ganson, but loses interest, shifting his focus to the goods in the wagons. Eldon whispers to the hidden Johann that the danger is far from over and to stay ready for a slaughter. Johann takes charge, whispering to the mercenaries to form a tight, circular perimeter around the cargo. He warns them that they need to move as one unit to survive the impending chaos. Goran sneers at him. He asks the stranger if he's forgotten who is actually signing the paychecks here. Khan tells Johann to back off. They handle the fighting, and the brats should just worry about not getting trampled. The young knight is stunned by their arrogance. He's trying to save their lives, not steal their jobs. Goran ignores him entirely, rallying the hired blades with a sharp whistle. He bellows for everyone to lock shields and prepare to repel any interference. Johann tries one more time, approaching the veteran Khan with a sense of urgency. He explains he's fought in these trenches before and asks for a spare shield to hold the line. Eldon shuts him down coldly, claiming resources are tight and the stowaway will have to fend for himself. The realization hits Johann like a cold wave. To these men, he is just another enemy waiting to happen. An Imperial soldier stomps over, demanding Johann lift his visor and reveal the face beneath the steel. He thinks fast, claiming a horrific skin plague makes him a biohazard to look upon. The guards laugh cruelly, insisting they don't care about his face. They just want to see the leper beneath the mask. The squad leader narrows his eyes, wondering why this rider is so desperate to remain a shadow. The air crackles with tension as the two men lock eyes through the iron slits. Johann knows his cover is blown. His muscles coil for an explosive strike. His fingers ghost over the hilt of his Dhanu's blade, ready to paint the checkpoint red. Suddenly, a sharp, authoritative voice cuts through the standoff. Eldon explodes at the soldiers, playing the part of the offended merchant prince perfectly. He asks if these lowborn grunts have the authority to harass a high-ranking member of the Katana Company. He threatens to escalate the matter, promising a formal complaint that will strip them of their ranks. He mentions his direct line to the Marcel branch, and the guard's bravado evaporates instantly. The soldier swallows his pride and signals his men to step back and let the caravan pass. The grunts grumble in frustration, forced to let a potential prize slip through their fingers. The leader leans in close to Johann, whispering that his luck won't last forever. The wagons creak across the border, slowly pulling away from the Imperial net. Johann steals one final look back at the checkpoint, his heart finally slowing its frantic pace. The Aquitaine soldiers stand like gargoyles on the road, watching the dust settle. As night falls and the shadows stretch, the mercenaries gather in the firelight. They huddle together to draw lots for the night's watch, excluding the outsider. In the privacy of his tent, Eldon studies a secret scroll before stepping out into the cool air. He dismisses Johann, telling him to get some sleep since he's not one of them. Johann mumbles his thanks as a mercenary contemptuously tosses a ragged bedroll into the dirt. The youth collapses onto the rough fabric, the heat of the fire finally lulling his body into submission. He drifts into a heavy, dreamless stupor by the dying embers of the campfire. High above, a watcher observes the silver glow of the moon through the skeletal branches. A dark silhouette emerges from the undergrowth, its eyes fixed on the sleeping caravan. The leader signals his bandits to ready their steel for the ambush. The plan is a classic pincer move: surround the wagons from the ridge and strike like a mountain slide. In the depths of his sleep, Sergeant Kim, Johann's mind retreats to his past life in the modern military. He relives a high-stakes tactical drill where his defense-in-depth strategy crushed an overwhelming opposition. His genius for reading the battlefield had made him a legend among the brass and his peers. He remembers the handshake of Lieutenant Colonel Kim Jibak and the promise of a glorious 5-day leave. The young sergeant offers a crisp salute, his chest swelling with pride and purpose. Back then, he truly believed the path of the soldier was his ultimate destiny. But the grind of toxic bureaucracy and the soul-crushing shifts soon soured his dreams. Combined with a paycheck that wouldn't buy a decent meal, he made the choice to walk away from it all. The nightmare shifts, showing him being dragged back to the barracks in chains. Johann's eyes snap open, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he returns to the world of fire and steel. He bolts upright, his chest heaving as he realizes the nightmare was only a trick of the mind. Johann takes a ragged breath, trying to steady his nerves after such a visceral shock. That haunting memory of his military service has left him drained, his muscles aching as if he'd actually been in the barracks. He scans the perimeter. The silver moonlight still drapes the camp in an eerie glow. Suddenly, the silence is shattered by a lethal rain of arrows whistling toward the campsite. Instinct takes over as Johann coils his body, bracing for the deadly hail. With godlike reflexes, he snatches a speeding arrow out of the air, inches from his throat. A cold realization sinks in. The Imperial hounds have caught his scent once again. Snarling in frustration at being hunted like an animal, he leaps to his feet. He knows he can't let the others be slaughtered in their sleep. He has to sound the alarm. Johann's voice thunders through the trees, a desperate cry to alert the mercenaries of the ambush. Eldance and his crew are jolted from their dreams by the scream of war. Rewind 5 minutes. Just before the chaos erupted, the campsite was thick with petty grievances. Khan was busy berating Ganson, furious that they were doing all the heavy lifting while the guest night rested. He snaps that you never trust a stranger with your life, especially one capable of killing them all for the cargo. Khan warns the rookie that such naivety is a one-way ticket to an early grave in this business. The veteran turns his back to resume his rounds, leaving Ganson to stew in his resentment. Ganson mutters that he took up the blade to prove his manhood and seek out glory. He spits that if he'd known the Gorn mercenaries were just a pack of fearful old men, he'd have never signed on. Khan halts in his tracks, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper as he asks the boy to repeat himself. The air between the two warriors turns electric under the dark canopy. Suddenly, the terrifying roar of ambush rips through the tension like a blade. A flurry of arrows descends upon them, seeking blood in the darkness. Khan reacts instantly, tackling Ganson to the dirt and using his own back as a human shield. As the initial volley tapers off, Khan peers over his shoulder, his face grimy with forest floor. He barks at Ganson to sprint back to camp and wake the others for the fight of their lives. But the rookie's bravado vanishes. He scrambles up and flees into the shadows, deserting his post. Khan watches in disbelief as the boy vanishes, only to be snapped back by a familiar voice. Gorn arrives at a dead run, breathless with relief at finding his partner alive amidst the carnage. Khan searches for Ganson, but quickly pivots, asking if the merchant survived the opening volley. Goran confirms Eldance is hunkered down beneath the lead wagon, awaiting orders. Johann slides into the clearing, commanding the veterans to form a defensive ring around the assets. He urges them to coordinate their strikes. A scattered defense is a dead one. He warns that the enemy is everywhere and nowhere. Goran, however, bristles at the boy's tone. He asks the traveler if he thinks he's the one paying their wages. Khan tells Johann to stay out of the professional's way. The boy's only job is to stay breathing. Johann is taken aback by their stubborn pride in the face of certain doom. His pupils dilate as he senses the massive force moving through the undergrowth. A tide of desperate bandits surges out of the shadows, weapons bared and eyes hungry. Johann realizes these aren't the elite wolves he feared, but a desperate rabble of scavengers. Khan bellows the order for all mercenary units to advance and meet the charge. The hired blades plunge into the dark woods, clashing with the bandits in a chaotic melee. Standing alone by the crates, Johann wonders who exactly is left to guard the prize. The forest becomes a symphony of steel and screams. The bandit chieftain howls for his men to swarm the mercenaries, using their superior numbers to drown them in blood. Goran blocks a savage swing, shouting for his men to hold the line. To retreat now is to die. A bandit's fist catches Goran across the jaw, sending the captain reeling. Khan screams in horror as his leader stumbles, unable to reach him through the press. The thief raises a jagged dagger to end Goran's life. Johann's eyes narrow. He can't sit idle any longer. In a blur of silver, he draws the crest retriever. A bandit turns, his eyes widening as the air grows cold. The thieves around him freeze, unable to comprehend the aura radiating from the silent night. From the dirt, Goran watches as the world seems to slow down around the youth. Johann strikes like a lightning bolt, cleaving through a bandit with a single, devastating swing. Crimson sprays across the grass, and a trail of blood slides down the enchanted blade. Johann watches in grim fascination as the ancient runes on the sword begin to glow, drinking in the life force. A bandit shrieks in terror, claiming the boy wields a cursed demonic blade that no mortal can stop. Johan's voice rings out like a funeral bell, introducing himself as Johan of House Yeis. The mercenaries freeze. The traveler they mocked is actually a highborn noble. He had subtly masked his name, switching eyes for Yeis. The bandits begin to tremble. The realization that they've attacked a scion of a great house sends a wave of panic through the rabble. Johan levels his glowing blade at the chieftain's throat, offering a final choice: surrender or execution. He promises that the crest retriever is hungry for more than just a few lives. The noble warns them that mercy is a finite resource. They should choose wisely. The bandit leader stands paralyzed, the sound of his own frantic breathing the only thing he can hear. One by one, the thieves begin to drop their steel into the mud, the fight drained from them. Following suit, the chieftain raises his hands and officially yields the field. Johan sheathes his terrifying weapon with a sharp metallic click. He turns his gaze toward Gorin, ordering him to bind the survivors and granting him full authority to execute any who resist. Gorin approaches Master Eldance, his voice shaking as he asks how they should proceed. He fears the noble will punish them for their earlier disrespect. They truly thought he was just a wealthy drifter. But Eldance waves it off, confident that their previous hospitality has earned them a measure of grace. The merchant approaches Johan, praising his skill and admitting he owes his life to the youth's blade. He confesses that he doesn't have enough gold to properly thank a man of Johan's caliber. Johan places a firm hand on the merchant's shoulder, stating that survival is the only reward he needs. The Catman is stunned by the noble's humility. Having spoken his piece, the young warrior begins to walk toward the edge of the camp to be alone with his thoughts. He pauses, tossing a dry remark over his shoulder. Next time, just give me the shield. Eldance nods vigorously. He swears that the best gear in the caravan will always be at Johan's disposal. Johan decides it's time to dig for the truth and asks the mercenaries to assist in the interrogation. Gorin adjusts his stance, suggesting that a more formal address is only fitting for a lord of his standing. The mercenaries roughly haul the bandit leader out of the shadows. He is kicked onto his knees, forced to look up at the man who decimated his squad. Johan looms over him, demanding the who and the why behind this desperate assault. The leader confesses the truth. They are the remnants of the fallen House Brits. He explains that House Brits was purged overnight on trumped-up charges of high treason. The wolves of Aquitaine were the ones who butchered their families. They fought like demons, but they were broken when the Emperor's personal monster, the noble executioner, entered the fray. A mercenary whispers the name that makes men's blood run cold: Karamabe, the Emperor's most loyal hunting dog. The bandit chieftain bows his head in shame. He asks for a quick death, admitting he has fallen from a soldier to a scavenger. He explains they are hunted as rebels by the South and branded as cowards by the North. They didn't choose to be bandits. They chose to keep breathing in a world that wants them dead. Johan probes for a deeper motive, but the man swears they were just hungry for the caravan's riches. Eldon snarls. He screams that his reputation is worth more than their pathetic lives. Johan signals Gorin to restrain the merchant, telling him to keep his head. He begins to reflect on the treason charges and Karamabe's cryptic words about doing it for him. The puzzle pieces finally snap together in his mind. He realizes there was never a conspiracy, only a greedy emperor using justice as a cloak for a bloody purge. Johan spits a curse at the throne, wishing 1,000 agonies upon the man who calls himself emperor. He looks at the broken soldiers before him, realizing they're all just orphans of the same cruel power. Though their plight is tragic, they've already crossed the line into banditry, leaving the young noble in a moral deadlock. Khan strides forward, crackling his knuckles as he offers to beat the captives until they spill every hidden secret. Johan raises a hand, dismissing the brutality. They've already squeezed the truth from these broken men. Out of nowhere, Ganson charges back into the fray, his blade aimed at a tied-up prisoner's throat in a fit of fake bravado. The bound captive somehow parries the strike with his chains, and Khan instantly steps in to shut the rookie down. Khan wrenches the sword away before Ganson can swing again, pinning him with a look of pure disgust. Ganson snarls, demanding to know why he's being stopped. Khan roars back that a coward who abandoned his post has no right to play executioner. The rookie goes silent. He retreats into a shell of cold, hollow indifference. The bandit leader falls to his knees, sobbing as he begs Sir Johann for a scrap of mercy, swearing to renounce his life of crime. Behind him, the rest of the gang huddles in the dirt, trembling as death looms over them. Khan grinds his teeth, waiting for the order to sweep his blade and end their pathetic existence. Johann's fingers tighten on his hilt as he weighs the cost of blood against the value of mercy. Then, he commands the mercenaries to strip them of their steel and cast them out into the night. The bandit leader gasps in gratitude, but Ganson spits on the ground, questioning why they're letting trash walk free. The young noble ignores the boy, turning his piercing gaze toward the shivering prisoners. He acknowledges their suffering, but warns them that preying on the weak is a path that only leads to the grave. Johann confesses that he, too, had to forge himself into a weapon just to survive another day. Eldon's ears twitch in shock at such words from a noble. He wonders what kind of highborn lord speaks so fluently of the struggle for survival. One of the hired blades nudges Goran, muttering that they're only sticking around because this lord's pockets seem deep. The noble bellows a final command to the bandits. Find a legitimate trade, or the next sword they meet won't be so forgiving. The bandit leader prostrates himself, vowing that they will carry the weight of this mercy forever. Johann urges the caravan to move out immediately. He has no desire to be caught in the fallout of this encounter. In the shadows, a silent, predatory shape tracks their every movement from the crest of a nearby hill. The creature stands tall against the moon, its fur matted and its eyes glowing with a malevolent red light. The caravan limps into the small hamlet of Rutzburg to catch their breath before the final push to Marseille. The village head is alerted. That Master Eldons of the legendary Katana Company has arrived at the gates. The old man rushes to the center of the village to greet the prestigious merchant. Eldons beams with a wide, toothy grin, exclaiming that it's been far too long since their last trade. The chief welcomes them warmly but notes the exhaustion in their eyes, asking if the road was unkind. The merchant explains that they were nearly swallowed by a horde of desperate bandits. He laments that the world has spiraled into chaos since the emperor's mind fractured. He's quickly hushed as treasonous talk invites the headsman's axe, but Eldons credits their survival to the mysterious, valiant noble in their ranks. The chief snorts, mentioning a noble charlatan who tried to swindle them weeks ago until he was beaten and chased out. The Catman chuckles, knowing his friend's temper often gets the better of him. Eldons insists this one is the real deal. He paints a picture of a warrior who is as honest as he is lethal, a true protector of the weak. And the kicker? He refused to take a single coin in payment, leaving the village chief utterly floored. The chief realizes that a knight of such caliber is exactly what Rutzburg needs to deter local raiders. In an era of fire and blood, a skilled blade is worth more than a mountain of salt. With that in mind, he practically begs the group to stay and recuperate for a few weeks. Eldons tries to politely decline, but the chief plays the old friend card to force his hand. Eldons teases him, accusing the old man of trying to poach his best bodyguard, while the two share a hearty laugh. The chief looks around, asking for the location of this paragon of virtue, who at that very moment is slumped in a dusty corner, his stomach growling loud enough to wake the dead. Stripped of his armor, he looks less like a grand lord and more like a beggar on death's door. Goran tracks him down, calling out to Sir Johann, who looks up with hollow, hungry eyes. The mercenary captain tosses a heavy leather pouch into his lap. The bag clinks with the music of coin, every scrap of gold confiscated from the bandits. He explains they liquidated the bandits' gear and horses for a tidy sum. The young noble looks at the riches and asks if Goran didn't skim a little off the top for his troubles. The mercenary shakes his head. The victory belonged to Johann, and the spoils follow the sword. Johann stares into the pouch for a long beat, then tosses a much larger bag back to Goran, ordering him to buy his men a proper feast. Goran stammers a refusal, insisting it's far too much gold to just give away to hirelings. But Johann's word is final. He won't take no for an answer. He shows a few meager coins in his palm, claiming he's kept plenty for himself. The noble maintains his facade, but secretly, he knows buying the loyalty of these men is his only shield against the Aquitaine assassins. He didn't win that fight alone. Johann declares they are brothers in arms now, forged in the fires of ambush. He offers a curt farewell and disappears into the village. Goran watches him go, moved by the sight of a noble who actually values the lives of his soldiers. He gathers the rest of his ragtag company. He bellows for their attention, announcing that Sir Johann has bestowed a massive bounty upon the troop. Also, breaks down the windfall from the loot sale and commands the men to line up for their share. The mercenaries are stunned. They've never seen a lord share the spoils so fairly. They swap confused, wide-eyed glances before erupting into a deafening cheer for Johann. Later that night, in a quiet inn, the exhausted youth finally collapses into a bed, his legendary blade never leaving his side. The door to his chamber begins to creak open an inch at a time. The flickering candlelight on the nightstand is suddenly snuffed out by a cold draft. Johann remains deep in a heavy sleep, completely unaware of the shadow creeping toward his bed. A pair of crimson, glowing eyes peer out from the darkness of the corner. A masked phantom looms over him, the cold steel of a dagger reflecting the moonlight. Earlier that evening, Goran's announcement of the bounty had set the village ablaze with excitement. The mercenaries had taken to the streets, their drunken cheers for Johann echoing through the stone alleys. Johann walks through the crowd, his head down as strangers shout his name in a drunken stupor. He kept the most valuable relics for himself, but the small silver he gave away has bought him an army of fans. An old innkeeper scurries up, asking if he has the honor of speaking with Lord Johann. Surprised, Johann asks how he's known. The man beams, noting that the hero who arrived with Master Eldens is the talk of the town. Immediately, he ushers Johann toward the finest suite in the house, mentioning that the Katana Company has already prepaid for everything. This was Eldens' subtle way of paying back his debt of honor without making it awkward. Johann accepts the hospitality, signaling the man to lead him to his long-awaited rest. Meanwhile, among the drinking soldiers, a question arises about why one man was left out of the pay. The veteran explains that since Ganson spent the battle hiding in a bush, he gets exactly 0 coppers. Hearing the mockery, Ganson turns his back, his face twisting into a mask of pure resentment. He stares out the window, his eyes narrowing as they catch a glimpse of the street below. He spots Johann being pampered by the innkeeper, and a dark, vengeful plan begins to take root in his mind. Johann finally reaches his room, desperate to wash the blood and grime from his soul. Behind a heavy oak door, the warrior sinks into a steaming, hot bath, the first luxury he's had in an eternity. As the water soothes his battered skin, he finally lets his guard down for a single moment. A soft mattress and a hot soak. Things he once took for granted now feel like the treasures of a king. Before this, he never truly understood the soul-crushing weight of being a homeless wanderer on the run. Despite his noble upbringing, he'd never realized that a clean bed was a privilege reserved for the lucky few. The Mad Emperor's purge had stripped away his world, leaving nothing but ash and bone. But he survived when so many others fell. He is the last spark of a dead house. That fact alone makes him more fortunate than the thousands buried in the snow. Deep in thought, he wonders if he should have played the pawn and accepted Karameb's offer. As it stands, the Imperial army will eventually corner him and snuff him out. Because of this, he needs a new strategy, a way to vanish, and then a realization strikes him. The mercenaries weren't just following Eldens. They were bound by something more. A pack of killers doesn't fear a cat in a silk robe. They fear the massive organization behind him. He recalls a lesson from his youth about how trading companies truly operate in the shadows. These corporations are global webs, sharing intelligence and gold across every border. The most powerful ones don't just trade. They pull the strings of kings, lords, and entire imperial armies. To survive the Empire's relentless pursuit, Johann knows he must infiltrate a major trading company at any cost. Nonetheless, he pushes those exhausting political strategies to the back of his mind for now, choosing instead to focus on filling his empty stomach and getting some much-needed sleep. Outside the inn, the silent night creeps forward at a snail's pace. Johann drifts into a deep slumber, his hand instinctively locked onto the hilt of his blade, even in sleep. Suddenly, the door to his chamber groans open, an inch at a time. A masked assassin creeps toward the bed, a jagged dagger glinting in the moonlight. The thief reaches out, his fingers trembling as he tries to snatch Johann's legendary sword. Before he can even graze the scabbard, the noble's eyes snap open and he intercepts the strike. Crushing the intruder's wrist, while coldly asking if these fools ever grow tired of failing. The sheer speed of the counterattack sends a wave of primal terror through the masked man. Sitting up with lethal grace, Johann demands a confession, questioning if the rat is one of Karamebe's hidden dogs. Panicked, the assassin thrashes wildly, screaming at the top of his lungs for Johann to release him. With a casual flick of his arm, Johann hurls the intruder through the door. As he crashes into the hallway, the noble seizes him by the leg like a piece of discarded luggage. Terrified, the thief claws at the floorboards, begging for someone to save him. Far too late, the predator realizes that the noble he tried to rob isn't human. He's a monster in disguise. Just 5 minutes before the chaos, the innkeeper was snoring peacefully behind his desk at the reception. In the shadows of the stairwell, 2 young shadows were ascending with ghost-like silence. Ganson whispers to PRA that everything is under control as long as they leave the heavy lifting to that guy. Convinced of their success, he boasts that Bullen, the strongest brute in the village, is too fast to be caught with the gear they provided. Meanwhile, Pell, the group's horse enthusiast, sticks to the plan and approaches Johann's warhorse with practiced care. He settles into the saddle and whispers for the beast to stay quiet. Intrigued, brah, whispers back to Ganson, asking if that noble's blade is truly worth risking their necks for. Ganson scoffs, asking his friend if he's ever witnessed a sword that can cleave a man in two like a piece of fruit. He vividly describes seeing that very weapon shear an armored soldier into 2 bleeding halves, insisting that a treasure with such destructive power must be worth a fortune. Furthermore, he claims a knight is toothless once his steel is stolen. Suddenly, the 2 thieves peek around the corner of the hallway. To their horror, they see their muscle, Bullen, broken on the floor while the dark silhouette of Johann looms in the doorway like a vengeful god. The wounded man's screams echo through the inn. Ganson stands frozen, his face turning pale with dread. PRA grabs his collar, hissing to know what the hell went wrong. Without a second thought, Ganson barks at him to run if he still values his life. A crushing sense of doom washes over him, and the chilling certainty that they are all dead men takes hold. At that exact moment, the innkeeper stumbles out, demanding to know who's causing a riot in his establishment. Outside, Pell is already waiting in the shadows with the stolen horses ready for the getaway. Seeing the others bolt toward him, he casually remarks that they took their sweet time. Fuming, Ganson screams at him to shut his mouth and prepare for a high-speed escape. Then, wheels on PRA, demanding to know Bullen's location. With a voice cracking from fear, PRA whimpers that Bullen is already dead, or wishing he was. Ganson orders them to mount up and ride, but PRA hesitates for Bullen while Pell refuses to leave a man behind. Ganson warns them that the noble will hunt them like dogs. Suddenly, the roof of the inn erupts in a shower of splinters and tiles, amidst the falling debris. Johann descends from the sky like a falling star, landing directly in their path. On the desolate southern border of the empire, the grisly sight of rotting corpses sways from a lone tree. Nearby, an imperial soldier hammers a fresh wooden stake into the hard earth. Wiping sweat from his brow, he confirms to his partner that the post is secure. Next, the duo nail a warning sign stating these peasants and their entire bloodlines were executed for thieving from the nobility. The decree is stamped with the cold, golden seal of the emperor himself, Cardi Dien by Salfer. One soldier mutters, wondering what grand treasure they could have stolen to earn such a horrific fate. His partner scoffs, revealing the crime was merely taking a single chicken and 3 eggs from Baron Warsaw's lands. The sheer absurdity of the punishment leaves the soldier speechless, unable to grasp such mindless cruelty. An entire family wiped out, all for a handful of scraps. Meanwhile, at a local tavern nearby, the evening air is thick with the scent of ale and wood smoke. Seated at a corner table, Eldons quietly enjoys a rare moment of peace with a warm cup of tea. His tranquility is shattered moments later, as a subordinate rushes in, breathless with news of a major disaster. He reveals that Ganson, the mercenary recruit, was caught red-handed trying to plunder Lord Johann Yeai's room. Hearing this, Eldons nearly knocks over his table, his eyes wide with pure disbelief and frustration. He sinks back into his chair, cursing the rotten luck of the situation. As he was just about to recruit Lord Johann for the long trek to Marseille. Facing this crisis, Eldons snaps out orders to have Ganson hunted down and shackled immediately. commanding the rest of the crew to act as if they've never even heard the boy's name. The subordinate bows and scurries off, marveling at how a katana merchant can stay so cold-blooded during a disaster. Left to his thoughts, Eldons tries to steady his racing heart, reminding himself that he survived far worse storms than a thieving mercenary. He knows he won't hang for another man's sin, but he still has to find a way to appease that dangerous noble. Elsewhere, a tense emergency meeting is being held in the village square. The chief stands, preparing to dismiss the terrified elders. Suddenly, a villager bursts through the doors, screaming that the chief needs to see this right now. He gasps out that the village troublemakers were caught trying to rob the visiting lord. Fuming, the chief slams his fist onto the table, branding the boys as brainless, suicidal idiots. A villager asks for a plan, but his hesitation only fuels the chief's explosive temper. He barks out orders to gather every tribute they have, and to include one of the village's own slaves to satisfy the noble's pride. Furthermore, he commands they prepare a public execution for the boys right in front of the lord. Immediately, the parents erupt in grief, begging him not to murder their children. Engulfed in rage, the chief grabs a stool and shatters it against the floor, screaming for silence. He towers over the weeping parents, demanding to know if they've lost their minds or if they've forgotten the emperor's blood-soaked laws. He bellows that they must strike first and offer their own blood to the noble, or the whole village will burn. The imperial decree is clear. Anyone coveting noble property loses their tongue, their life, and the lives of their kin to the gallows. In other regions, entire hamlets have been razed to the ground because of this one insane law. All of this carnage for a chicken and 3 eggs. To the chief, every noble is a ticking time bomb of vanity. He wheels on a sobbing mother, asking her if she truly thinks this knight will play fair after being insulted. Once a noble's pride is wounded, they don't just seek justice. They seek total annihilation, perhaps, even slaughtering the entire village while preaching about the sanctity of chivalry. One man suggests they belong to Count Harpen's domain and could appeal for his protection. The chief scoffs, retorting that nobles only care about their twisted games of honor, never the lives of the insects they step on. He hammers the table one last time, screaming for his people to wake up to the reality of their world. While the parents sink into despair, the rest of the village stands in grim silence. The chief softens his voice slightly, asking if they truly think he enjoys being the executioner. With a heavy heart, he laments the sacrifice of their youth, but insists the village can only survive if the guilty pay the price. It is a choice made for the survival of the many. Later, a grim crowd assembles under the massive hanging tree. As the townspeople draw near in a somber procession, the 3 youths are forced onto their knees, bound and trembling on the dirt, while a 4th man, Bullen, lies broken and motionless beside them. Watching from the sidelines, Johann realizes the situation has spiraled into a nightmare, as he never intended for a simple theft by village boys to turn into a bloodbath. It's obvious the legendary sword was the bait. He makes a mental note to keep his steel shrouded from now on. He takes some of the blame for flaunting such a treasure. He only intended to give them a good scare before letting them go. Seated in a place of honor, Johann waits as the restless crowd prepares for the justice to begin. Shortly after, the village elder nervously approaches, inquiring if the Honorable Lord Johann finds his current accommodation satisfactory. Johann doesn't sugarcoat his words, replying with a sharp edge that no, he is anything but satisfied. He asks if it's a sacred Rutzburg tradition to welcome honored guests by holding blades to their throats and plundering their bags. The elder instantly hits the dirt, prostrating himself in a desperate, sincere plea for forgiveness while taking full responsibility. He laments his own failure, cursing himself for failing to keep those brainless idiots on a tighter leash. Johann gives one of the boys a stern warning to value his life more next time and waves them all away. Suddenly, the village chief's hand flashes toward a concealed dagger. Poising the blade over one of the kneeling youths, he bellows that only their heads can wash away the stain on Johann's honor. In a heartbeat, Johann's hand shoots out, barking a command for the old man to halt his strike. He makes it crystal clear that he has no desire for a bloodbath. Still, the elder insists that those who insulted a lord must pay in blood. Disregarding the mercy, he raises the steel again to execute the boy. The youth's mother, shields her eyes in agony, whispering a final, tearful apology to her son. However, the lethal strike is intercepted midair. With a voice like ice, Johann asks the chief if he's gone deaf to a direct order. The elder and the gathered villagers freeze, their eyes locked on the noble in stunned silence. The entire square falls deathly quiet as the tension reaches a breaking point. Johann rises, asking if the world has truly gone mad enough to butcher children over such a petty grievance. He declares that if they want the boys to pay for their sins, they should make them pay with sweat and coin, not lives. The crowd stares back, unblinking, realizing his logic might be too common for this era. He clears his throat to repeat himself. He asks how honor can outweigh a human soul and commands them to untie the boys and disperse immediately. The dagger slips from the chief's trembling fingers, thudding uselessly into the mud. Overflowing with awe, the village leader kneels, moved by a display of nobility he thought was a myth. PRA's parents rush to embrace him, sobbing with joy to find their son still among the living. The elder stares in disbelief, realizing Eldance wasn't exaggerating. This knight is cut from a different cloth entirely. The hardened mercenaries offer a respectful bow, vowing to remember the Lord who chose mercy over mindless slaughter. Ganson mutters a shaky apology, admitting he misjudged the noble's character and allowed himself to be led astray by fools. As the ropes fall, a villager whispers that they've been kissed by luck, for any other knight would have left them for the crows. At that moment, the mercenary captain looms over the still-bound Ganson, who pathetically begs to be released. Bitterly, Ganson curses the day he ever signed up with this ragtag band of losers. Suddenly, the leader's hand clamps down on Ganson's face. Terrified, the youth stammers, asking what's happening. In a chilling tone, the man tells him to stop fighting and go limp, promising that it'll be over much faster that way. A shadow looms behind Ganson to strike just as Johann glances back, his eyes widening at the sudden, violent shift in the air. Johann wheels around, but he's too late. Ganson's limp body hits the dirt, executed ruthlessly in front of his own comrades. Faced with the fresh corpse, Johann steps forward, demanding to know what kind of madness has possessed them now. The mercenary leader stands his ground, justifying the kill as a mandatory fulfillment of the Emperor's iron decree. He claims he merely purged the rat who dared to covet a highborn noble's riches. Johann snaps back, furious that his previous orders for mercy were ignored so blatantly. The surrounding mercenaries and Eldance watch the confrontation in a heavy, suffocating silence. Addressing the Lord, the leader explains that even hired swords live by a code of blood and honor. To him, Ganson's cowardice didn't just insult the Lord. It spat on their reputation and put the entire troops' lives at risk. The execution was the only way to purge the rot and protect their survival. Next, the captain offers his own dagger hilt first to Johann, inviting the noble to execute him if he believes his authority was truly undermined. In that moment, Johann realizes the grim truth. These men have their own brand of honor, a desperate, rigid set of rules they guard with their very lives. At this, Johann slowly sheathes his own sword. The villagers and mercenaries continue to watch the standoff, holding their collective breath. Then, he gently pushes the offered blade away. Honestly, Johann admits he failed to see things from their perspective and offers a rare apology to the mercenary. The gesture sends a shockwave through the camp. Both the mercenaries and Eldance are floored, having never witnessed a noble humble himself before a commoner. Johann tells Khan to put the steel away, and the veteran mercenary bows low, seeking final absolution. He gives Khan a firm nod, thanking him for his unwavering loyalty to his own code. One of the men jests at Khan for having the stones to stand up to a lord, but Khan just grunts, telling him he's welcome to take the next beating if he's so jealous. From the shadows, Eldance watches Johann with eyes full of newfound intrigue. This noble is a total anomaly, just terrifyingly brave and completely devoid of the usual aristocratic arrogance. Eldance begins to wonder how such a man could even exist. He decides right then that Johann must be his primary ally to secure his future in the company. Later, the caravan pulls out of Rutzburg, silhouetted against a burning sunset. During the ride, Johann fiddles with a pocket watch he pulled from the bandit loot. High in his saddle, he sighs, realizing he picked the shiniest prize only to find it was a broken piece of junk. Suddenly, the sound of light footsteps approaches from his rear. A young woman calls out to Master Johann, reminding him that he now has a new responsibility to look after. A voice hails him from the village gates. The elder catches up, carrying a bundle of gifts prepared by the villagers as a token of their undying gratitude. Johann spots a fine watch in the pile, and is shocked they would part with something so costly. To his surprise, the elder also presents a slave, claiming the boy is a geographical genius and will be a vital guide. It was the first time Johann had seen a human being in such a hollowed-out, deplorable state. Leaving the boy, there would be a death sentence. Accepting the gift, he asks the villagers to wash and feed the lad before they depart. The chief announces that Godin has been officially accepted. Johann takes him in, though the title of master feels like ash in his mouth. As night falls and the camp is established, the mercenaries roast meat over the crackling flames. While one warns Khan to stay away from the ale if he wants to stay sharp, Godin approaches Johann, who is meticulously honing his blade, and timidly calls him master. The youth offers a plate of food, and Johann accepts with a quiet thanks. Immediately, he asks Godin to drop the slave talk and just address him by his name. Grateful, the boy bows, while Johann secretly wonders if the delicate features mean the boy is actually a girl. Curiously, he asks how someone so educated in geography ended up wearing chains. Godin sighs, admitting it's a dark tale, then asks if tragedy ever strikes the highborn as well. Johann invites him to speak first. Godin explains he was once a merchant's apprentice, moving weapons across the eastern frontiers. Over time, at the behest of a corrupt noble, he was forced into a gold smuggling ring. Hearing this, Johann notes that such a crime usually ends at the gallows, calling him lucky to be alive. Godin whispers that he did it for his family. His younger siblings were rotting away from sickness and hunger. He kept moving the forbidden gold to keep them fed, until the very noble who hired him sold him out to the authorities to cover his own tracks. Johann realizes the boy was just a disposable pawn and asks if he ever got a chance to defend himself. Shaking his head, Godin says that under the Emperor's new laws, a traitor has no right to a voice. At this, Johann asks if the blood money at least reached his siblings. The youth reveals that every copper was drained by the guards as bribes, just to keep him from immediate execution. Godin tries to apologize for his failure, but Johann stops him, telling him he has nothing to be sorry for. The sheer cruelty of this world makes Johann grind his teeth in silent fury. Without power, innocent people were branded as monsters, crushed under the heel of an aristocracy that treated them like cattle. The Hausbritz soldiers were forced into banditry just to survive the night. The Rutzburg villagers were driven to the point of sacrificing their own flesh and blood. And now Godin, a boy used and thrown away like trash. Johann stares into the fire, questioning if a world this fair even deserves to stand. He begins to wonder if he should be the one to tear it all down. He immediately shakes those heavy thoughts away, reminding himself that he's a hunted man with the Imperial Army breathing down his neck. He calls out to Godin, who snaps to attention with unwavering focus. Johann looks him in the eye and declares, "From today on, we're partners. We survive together, and we thrive together." The young girl's face instantly flushes a deep crimson. A mercenary suddenly breaks the moment, shouting that a monster has been sighted lurking nearby. Johann pushes himself up with a sigh, lamenting that he can't even catch 5 minutes of peace. He demands the location of the beast, and the scout points toward the tree line as the group charges into the night. Left behind in the glow of the embers, Godin softly whispers Johann's words back to herself like a prayer. Catching up to the front line, Johann asks if the beast is within striking distance. The mercenaries shift uneasily, claiming the pitch-black shadows are playing tricks on their eyes. Yet they are certain a massive presence is stalking them from a gloom. Without a word of caution, Johann steps out from the safety of the brush, triggering a chorus of panicked whispers from the mercenaries telling him to get back. He remains unfazed, simply stating that there's no need for alarm. To their utter bewilderment, Johann commands them all to sheath their steel and lower their guard. He announces he's going in alone for a closer look and vanishes into the heart of the dark forest. Khan grumbles that monster hunting isn't for amateurs, and that even one mistake can be fatal. He reminds the troop that their sole priority is Eldon's life, They can't afford to play hero for a stranger. Suddenly, Johann halts, his eyes sliding shut as he tunes into the vibrations of the forest. As he moves toward a thicket, he feels a familiar, bone-chilling pressure that would paralyze any normal man. Two glowing orbs ignite in the darkness directly in front of him. Johann smirks. It's the Black Wolf of ill omen, the same bastard that shadowed him before. He remembers their last meeting, where the beast chose to tear apart the wolves of Aquitaine instead of him. Despite having a dozen chances to end him, the creature has only ever stood watch. Johann realizes this isn't a predator, it's a guardian. He beckons the beast to step into the light, and a massive, midnight black wolf silently materializes. Johann reaches out, asking if it followed his scent all this way, and offering a quiet thanks for the earlier rescue. Khan stammers, asking if the kid is some kind of monster tamer, while the others stare in wide-eyed disbelief. The legendary wolf glides forward, sniffing Johann's face with a low, rumbling growl. In an instant, the beast lunges and snaps its jaws shut around Johann's head. A mercenary lets out a strangled scream, certain they've just witnessed the noble's execution. Eldance suddenly shoves his way through the crowd, barking at the little hooligan to clear the path. With his skull still resting between the wolf's fangs, Johann calmly tells his men to relax. The big guy is just playing. He keeps a firm grip on the animal's fur, revealing that this is the fabled guide of the dawn. Eldance's eyes nearly pop out of his head. Johann, meanwhile, just tilts his head, wondering why the name sounds so familiar. Eldance begins to recount an ancient myth from the Eastern Empire about this divine creature. Legend says that during the Great War, a peerless warrior gave this wolf its name. The Guide of the Dawn, in a display of absolute submission, bowed its head to that warrior and that warrior alone. Its eyes blazed like twin suns, and the armies cheered as it led the vanguard through the bloodiest battles. When the war ended and the hero finally fell, the Black Wolf howled in mourning for 3 days and nights, before vanishing into the mist to find a new era and a new hero worthy of its loyalty. Johann scoffs, noting that in the South, they just call it the Black Wolf of ill omen. Eldance explains that the South has a habit of distorting Eastern lore into something far more sinister. He quotes an old verse, "The Guide of the Dawn strikes the wicked and kneels before the true hero." The merchant reveals the line comes directly from the forbidden texts of the East. The weight of the moment finally lands on Johann. He realizes he's holding a legend by the ears. Eldance timidly asks for a chance to touch the divine fur, and Johann shrugs his approval. But as the merchant inches forward, the wolf lets out a snarl, so vicious the man nearly trips over himself. The Catman quickly decides that some things are better left unpetted. Johann strokes the wolf's neck, and it purrs like a kitten, leaving Eldance wondering why the beast is only soft for this one human. Suddenly, a spark of merchant brilliance lights up Eldance's brain. He recalls that in the old songs, naming a divine beast binds it to you as an eternal vassal. For a split second, he looks at this gritty southerner and wonders if he's looking at a living legend. He tries to dismiss it as crazy, but his gut tells him otherwise. Eldance leans in, asking Johann if he's officially named his new guide yet. When Johann says he hasn't gotten around to it, Eldance practically begs him to give the beast a name right here and now. He's convinced that if the myth is real, they are about to witness a miracle. Johann mulls over a name, while the merchant frantically whispers, "Name him Tana, Tana." But Johann's mind drifts back to the bastard he buried, the infamous Karamabe. With a smirk, Johann points at the beast and declares, "Your name is Karamabe." Eldance's jaw drops. He recognizes that name as a dark omen, not a hero's title. Instantly, the wolf's eyes flare with a terrifying, ethereal light. A shockwave of raw power erupts, nearly knocking Eldance off his feet. The creature lets out a world-shaking howl, as its very anatomy begins to shift and refine under a cloak of swirling energy. The Guide of the Dawn is reborn, bound to the name Karamabe. The new, more majestic wolf looks at its master with eyes full of ancient, silent intelligence. Johann ruffles its fur and tells the beast he's counting on it for the road ahead. He turns to find Eldance and asks what on earth the merchant is doing on the ground. The mercenaries stand in stunned silence, watching Eldance prostrate himself before Johann and the wolf, his eyes brimming with tears. The merchant stammers that the myth has come to life exactly as written, and he's honored to be a witness. He declares that his respect for Johann has transformed into absolute devotion. He lists Johann's feats, defeating bandits, showing divine mercy, and now, taming the beast of legend. In a voice loud enough for the whole camp to hear, Eldance proclaims him the hero of the chaotic age. The mercenaries and Godin exchange shocked glances at the weight of that title. The camp erupts in whispers. They begin to wonder if they are truly following a man of destiny. Johann's face twitches with sheer awkwardness. He cuts Eldance off, apologizing and insisting he's just a wanderer from a fallen house who's really just trying not to starve. He even confesses he's a fugitive because he beat the original Karamabe to death. He offers another apology for ruining the merchant's fantasy. But Eldance doesn't look disappointed at all, quite the opposite. He asks for the honor of introducing Johann to the powerful Machin Trading Company as a token of his gratitude. Johann recalls the mention of Marcel and asks what kind of place it actually is, since he's been out of the loop for a while. Eldance describes Marcel as a sprawling free trade paradise, the one place where the Emperor's law means nothing. Now that is music to Johann's ears. He accepts the proposal, claiming it would be rude to refuse such kindness, while Eldance beams with secret joy. Johann figures if the Emperor can't touch him there, he might finally be able to retire and live as a peaceful merchant. As Eldance hums a happy tune, Johann silently prays the hero rumors don't beat him to the city gates. He mulls over the title hero of the chaotic age, thinking how much easier life would be if he actually had that kind of power. But he knows the truth. In this life and the last, he's just a survivor clawing his way forward. The image of an old, arrogant figure flashes in his mind, the man who doomed him to a life of suffering. He clenches his fist, admitting his first life was a mess of struggle. But this time, things are different. He's taking the reins and moving by his own will. With a new fire in his eyes, the group resumes their march toward the merchant capital, Marseille. Godin looks at the horizon, whispering that she never thought she'd see those gates again. Entering the bustling marketplace, Johann decides it's high time for a change of clothes and a full stomach. Suddenly, Karamabe trots ahead, catching a shopkeeper's eye. Johann calls out to him. The woman giggles, calling the giant wolf a cute little pup and tossing him a treat. Johann blinks, realizing that in this city, even monsters are just part of the scenery. Karamabe looks just like a tiny, harmless puppy. One day before they reached the gates of Marseille, the group set up camp in the woods. At that moment, Johann turns to Karamabe and calls him over for a serious talk. He explains that a beast of his size would trigger a massive panic in the city and asks him to wait in the outskirts. In an incredible display of magical prowess, Karamabe's massive frame begins to ripple and shrink. Johann watches in awe as the terrifying beast morphs into a pocket-sized companion. Surprised, he wonders if this chibi form is just another hidden perk of being a divine beast. Without missing a beat, Godin lunges forward and scoops up the tiny Karamabe, squealing about how precious he looks. Johann sighs in relief, realizing this pint-sized version won't raise any eyebrows. Back to the present. A crowd of locals gathers around, cooing at the exotic-looking pup and wondering if he's a rare breed from the east. Godin awkwardly bows, apologizing for the little one's wild energy, but Johann whispers that they need to keep moving. The shadows of their pursuers are never far behind. Soon, Godin pulls Johann aside and offers to upgrade all their gear if they can just find a sturdy bag, revealing his hidden past as a top-tier equipment merchant. He peeks into their purse, seeing only 4 measly silver coins, and asks if they can really afford a full overhaul. Godin just smirks, plucking a single silver coin with total confidence. He vows to secure every item on their list, using nothing more than that lone piece of silver. Johann tells him to quit dreaming, questioning how a single coin could buy anything but a loaf of bread. A short while later, Johann is standing fully geared and looking sharp, and he is absolutely floored that Godin pulled off a miracle with just 1 silver coin. They've scored a high-spec tactical bag for Johann and a heavy-duty supply pack for Godin, making their inventory management a breeze. Using his legendary silver tongue, Godin managed to flip a literal piece of junk helm for a fortune and even charmed a merchant into giving him a free mace. After stocking up on weapon oil and essential rations, he somehow still had extra copper jingling in his pocket. They actually ended the shopping spree with more money than they started with. Johann realizes that if a trash-tier helm can fetch that much, the high-level gear he buried back with the original Karamabe must be worth a king's ransom. He makes a mental note. If they ever pass that way again, he's digging up that gold mine for a massive payday. Watching the boy work, Johann notices Godin looks truly alive while haggling and asks if merchant was his true calling. Adjusting his new straps, the youth admits with a sad smile that he truly missed the thrill of the trade. The dark memories of his time in chains flicker in his mind, days spent in a fog of despair and the stench of death. But now, thanks to Johann, the fire of his merchant spirit has been rekindled. With tears in his eyes, Godin swears that even if he'd never been enslaved, he'd still follow Johann to the ends of the earth. Johann smiles, telling him he's glad to have such a sharp partner on his side. The response is instant, a bright and energetic count on me, from the boy. With that, the duo dives into the vibrant streets of Marseille. After weeks of surviving on the road, Johann, whose life had been nothing but a series of brutal struggles, finally tastes a level of luxury he thought was gone forever. The trail rations he ate before were like chewing on dry leather. But the street food in Marseille is a culinary dream that melts on the tongue. On the run, he hadn't seen a bathtub in ages, and the constant grime was driving him insane. In this city, however, he can soak in steaming hot water whenever his heart desires. He spent his nights shivering on cold, jagged stones that left his body broken. In Marseille, he finally sinks into a mountain of warm, velvet blankets. At this, Johann decides that this city is a paradise worth defending and considers making it his permanent home. He envisioned a quiet, happy life in Marseille, but the gears of fate were already turning against him. The next day, the city square is buzzing with energy. While walking, Johann breathes in the fresh air, marveling at the peaceful atmosphere, as it had been an eternity since he could walk a street without looking over his shoulder. Suddenly, a prickle at the back of his neck warns him that the peace is just a fragile mask. He spots a group of agitated citizens and wonders if the city's underbelly is more dangerous than it looks. A man shouts that a band of thugs snatched Dave's daughter and made off with an entire caravan's worth of goods. Johann keeps chewing his skewer, playing the role of an indifferent traveler while soaking up the intel. The crowd grumbles that with bandits getting so bold, even a free city like Marseille isn't safe anymore. Godin leans in, whispering to Johann that the city's mood is souring fast because of the rising crime wave. Further down the road, a rogue mercenary is bullying a street vendor, demanding free food and screaming about his status. He bellows that a warrior of his rank shouldn't have to pay after going 4 days without a meal. The man was a straggler from the wolves of Aquitaine, one of the hounds who got lost while hunting Johann. The mercenary turns to continue his tantrum, but freezes as if he'd seen a ghost. In that heartbeat, the killer and the prey lock eyes. The mercenary roars in recognition and draws his blade, charging like a madman. Johann's blood runs cold. The wolves have tracked him even here, and his quiet life is about to go up in flames. He knows a public brawl is the last thing he needs if he wants to stay under the radar. The mercenary lunges through the crowd, screaming for Johann's head. But before the steel can bite, a rider on a magnificent horse streaks past, intercepting the attack with a heavy blow. The mercenary is sent flying, dropping like a stone before the gasping crowd. The rider looks down with disdain, muttering that the city's security has really gone to the dogs lately. He turns to Johann, addressing him as a fellow traveler, and asks if he escaped the madman's blade unscathed. Johann keeps his cool, thanking the man for the timely intervention. The rider gives a sharp, professional smile and warns him to keep his wits about him in these lawless times. With a click of his tongue, he spurs his horse and disappears into the bustling traffic. Meanwhile, a massive display of military might begins to unfold in the square. Regiments of armored men are snapping into formation, their steel gleaming under the sun. Bradley, the legendary captain of the Oak Mercenaries, bellows for the citizens to remain calm. He boasts that his 500 elite warriors will hunt down every last bandit and restore Marseille to its former glory. Godin's eyes sparkle at the sight of the famous troop, while Johann asks if they're actually worth the hype. Godin explains that the Oak Mercenaries are the heavy hitters of the Empire the best money can buy. The boy realizes that with the local bandit problem spiraling out of control, The merchant lords must have pooled their gold to hire these professionals for a clean sweep. Johann stays silent, his mind racing as he watches the heroes march. He realizes that if Bradley hadn't stepped in, he would have had to use his real skills, blowing his cover instantly. If his face becomes known, Marcel will transform from a refuge into a giant death trap. The haunting promise of a life filled with endless suffering echoes in the back of his mind. He takes a long, steadying breath, forcing himself to remember that he is still the Empire's most wanted fugitive. His only lifeline is to embed himself within a powerhouse trading company, the only force the Emperor hesitates to crush. Luckily, Eldon's glowing recommendation has opened a door for him. He finally has a chance to pitch himself to the Mackin Trading Company. However, he shudders to think what would happen if his past caught up to him before he was useful. He knows that a trading company is a business, not a charity. They won't protect a man who brings the Imperial Army to their door. If his identity leaks before he's indispensable to Katana, he's as good as dead. With his path clear, Johann tightens his grip, more determined than ever to reach the inner circle of the Katana Trading Company and secure a shield against the Emperor's wrath. Until he's untouchable, the name Johann must remain a ghost. Suddenly, a melodic female voice cuts through his thoughts, calling his name. A stunning beast woman introduces herself as Abelka, a high-ranking executive of the Katana Company. She explains that Eldon's glowing reports have reached her ears, and the company is eager to build a bridge with a man of his noble standing. With a graceful gesture, Abelka invites him to the Katana headquarters for a formal meeting. They arrive at the towering Marcel branch of the Katana Trading Company. Out front, Godin tries to play with Karamade, but the little divine beast just gives his finger a sharp, playful nip. Wrapped in silence, Johann waits within a lavish reception room, the air thick with the scent of luxury. He has finally breached the inner sanctum of the company, praying this gamble will be the turning point for his cursed fate. Just then, the soft rustle of silk announces someone's arrival from the shadows behind him. A woman's voice rings out, confirming his identity as Lord Johann and mentioning that Eldon's glowing reports preceded him. Johann turns to face her, finding a woman of poised grace standing ready to introduce herself. She reveals she is Yen, the iron-willed manager of the Katana Trading Company's Marcel branch. Johann offers his own introduction as a scion of House Yeis, and Yen responds with a sharp, calculating smile. She gestures toward a steaming pot, inviting him to talk business over a cup of tea. Johann accepts the offer. A rare, exotic beverage from the distant Mediterranean is placed before him with elegant precision. She expresses her hope that the brew suits his refined palate. Johann thanks her, though he instantly recognizes the dark, rich aroma of coffee. He casually asks if the tea was brewed from roasted fruit seeds, earning an impressed look from Yen for his keen senses. She wastes no more time and suggests they dive into business. Yen leans forward, claiming she can already read the secret desires that brought him to her door. The statement catches Johann completely off guard, causing him to choke on his drink in surprise. His mind races. Has the company already realized he's a fugitive with an imperial bounty on his head? Reading his sudden tension, Yen begins to clarify the ambition she sees swirling in his eyes. She claims that a fire burns within him, a restless, hungry ambition that cannot be ignored. Johann blinks, not entirely following the flow of her poetic deduction. Yen explains that Eldon spoke of a man who protected the weak and showed a warrior's mercy to his fallen foes. Seeing him arrive in a city plagued by lawless bandits, she assumed he intended to conquer the chaos with his own blade. Johann quickly recovers and nods, letting her believe she has unmasked his noble intentions. Yen declares that such ambition isn't a flaw, but a hallmark of those destined for greatness. She adds that the Katana Company thrives by fueling the dreams of those they deem worthy of their investment. Johann realizes the door is wide open. This is the perfect opening for the alliance he desperately needs. Yen goes a step further, offering to personally introduce him to the governor of Marcel. He knows the governor holds the keys to the city. With the backing of both the merchant lords and the government, he'd be untouchable. He decides he must seize this chance. Under the company's wing, even the Emperor's reach will fall short. Accepting the proposal, Johann asks for the fine print of what Katana sponsorship actually covers. Yen explains that their support is a golden ticket, granting him the finest food, lodging, and luxury the city has to offer. However, her smile turns sharp as she raises a finger, warning him of a single, non-negotiable condition. He must swear an oath to draw his sword under the katana banner whenever the call arises. She demands that his lethal skills belong to them whenever the company faces a threat that gold can't settle. Johann assumes she wants him to hunt the local bandits, but she dismisses the idea with a wave of her hand. She notes that the Oak mercenaries are already handling that pest control, leaving a far darker task for him. A heavy silence fills the room before Johann asks what kind of task requires a specific brand of violence. Yayan explains that rival districts are grumbling about Katana's dominance, whispering accusations of a monopoly. She coldly proposes that he liquidate the leaders of these dissident factions, and to ensure no loose ends. Their children should be wiped out as well. She locks eyes with him, waiting to see if the noble warrior has the stomach for such a bloody price. Johann remains deathly still, his mind churning over the dark reality of the merchant world. The sun dips below the horizon, bathing the Katana headquarters in a blood-red glow. Finally, Johann emerges from the building, his face unreadable. Outside, Godin rushes to meet him, buzzing with anxiety about how the high-stakes meeting concluded. Johann says nothing at first, staring blankly at the fading light until Godin calls out to him again. Suddenly, Johann erupts into a grin, shouting to Godin that they've hit the jackpot and are about to suck some honey. Godin stands there, blinking in total confusion at the strange metaphor. 1 hour earlier, the two were still locked in that tense negotiation, even as the seer Suigra foresaw that things were about to take a chaotic turn. Johann flatly rejected the bloodthirsty proposal, standing his ground with a warrior's pride. He argued that in a hub like Marseille, some friction over trade is inevitable and hardly warrants a massacre. He asked if she truly expected a knight to solve a simple market dispute by slaughtering families, children included. He firmly stated he wouldn't lift a finger for such a butcher's errand and walked toward the door. He told her to forget they ever met and to keep her sponsorship. A heavy, electric silence stretched between the noble and the merchant for several heartbeats. Then, Yayan's cold mask shattered into a delighted, knowing smirk. She informed him that he had passed her integrity test, leaving Johann completely baffled. Bowing deeply, she admitted it was a ruse to see if he was a mindless killer or a man of principle. Johann asked if the monopoly was a lie too. The manager laughed, clarifying that Katana is beloved by honest merchants and would never stoop to such petty tyranny. She confirmed the sponsorship was his and emphasized that he wouldn't be sent to a slaughterhouse. The Oak mercenaries are the frontline muscle. Until they return, Johann is free to live like a king on the company's tab. She extended her hand, officially inviting him to join the ranks of the Katana elite. Johann seized her hand, his enthusiasm returning now that his conscience was clear. With a firm handshake, the alliance was forged. Johann offered a toast to a partnership that would bring prosperity to both of them. Back in the present, Godin asked for the translation of sucking honey. Johann laughs, explaining it means they're going to live the high life and buy the most expensive gear, using the bottomless pockets of the Katana Trading Company. Godin's eyes go wide, asking if the deal really went that well. Johann confirms he's officially a sponsor man. The boy cheers, and Johann gives him a confident pat on the back. Johann allows himself a moment of hope. With Katana's shadow over him, he might finally find peace in Marseille. He's certain that a group as powerful as the Oak mercenaries will crush them in no time. His dream of a quiet, luxurious life feels within reach, and he decides it's finally time to let his guard down. But as they walk, a blood-curdling scream shatters the afternoon air. A crowd is already forming around a grisly sight. Mangled bodies dumped unceremoniously in the street. Johann's heart sinks as he pushes through the crowd to see why such a horror has been left in plain sight. Goran appears from the side, signaling his presence, prompting a grim Johann to ask for the details. Goran explains that the bandits have escalated their tactics, butchering the families of merchants to send a message of terror to the entire city. Johann stares at a blood-soaked corpse on the cobblestones, realizing the peace he craved was a beautiful lie. The square erupts in fury. Citizens scream that the city's leadership is failing them. A man whispers that the emperor himself might be pulling the bandits' strings to destabilize the region, but he's shouted down by those terrified of the very thought. The argument turns into a riot. with neighbors turning on each other over their loyalty to the throne. Chaos reigns as accusations fly and children cry, and Johann watches the city's unity crumble. He sees the fragile piece of Marcel being torn to shreds by an invisible enemy. He narrows his eyes, wondering why the elite mercenaries haven't ended this nightmare yet. Deep within the Katana branch, a frantic Abelka bursts into the manager's office, her face pale as she delivers a report of total catastrophe. Yan, already sensing the tragedy from the bodies in the square, demands to know why the Oak mercenaries are silent. Abelka trembles, reporting that they've lost all contact with the 500 men. Yan's composure slips. How can an army vanish? Abelka reveals the gruesome truth. The body of their messenger was found near the woods, mutilated beyond recognition. Yan refuses to believe it. The Oak mercenaries were a professional army. There is no way a pack of bandits could wipe them out. She slams her desk, her voice booming as she calls for her most trusted asset. She orders Abelka to summon Suigra, the mystical mage of the Ippel River, to use her sight, and confirm if the mercenaries have truly been slaughtered. Under the shimmering moon, the waters of the Ippel River glow. Suigra swirls her hand in the current, her eyes turning white as the visions take hold. She tells the Katana leadership that their search for the lost army is a fool's errand. The prophecy reveals a different truth. Johann, the fugitive who slew the Emperor's favorite hound, is the only card Marcel has left to play.